Chapter 21. Chapter 21, Clearing the Space. 3. After the acid slime died, Michael felt a surge of power flood through him. His mind sharpened, his strength increased, his defense tightened, and his speed quickened. I leveled up, Michael thought happily. Unlike the previous level up, where he only felt pain, this time he could clearly sense the changes that came with leveling up. And since he leveled up twice in a row, the boost in strength was even more pronounced. Excited, Michael immediately checked his status to see the results. Status: Name: Michael Norman. Class: Necromancer Apprentice. Level: 4, 2 carat. EXP: 48/600. Strength: 2.2, 0.6 carat. Agility: 5.9, 1.0 carat. Constitution: 4.0, 0.6 carat. Intelligence: 7.5, 2.0 carat. Attribute points: 13. Skills: Undead Summoning, Undead Revival, Detect, Basic Shot. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Class skill: Contract Slot 08. Gift: Mark of Origin. Seeing his newly updated status, Michael felt a surge of emotion. In just a little over an hour in the land of origin, he had transformed into someone monstrous by human standards. What thrilled Michael most was the increase in his attribute points, the foundation of his power. The sight of 13 attribute points filled him with joy. 13 attribute points. Including the one I saved from my previous level up, I gained 6 from leveling up to level 3 and another 6 from reaching level 4. Should I use them now? Michael was a bit conflicted, like having a sudden windfall without knowing where to spend it, even though the possibilities were endless. Considering how he might leverage these points for another power boost, Michael paid attention to his stats. My strength is now twice that of an average human. Even though it's my weakest stat, it's still very strong. For now, I don't need to increase it since I haven't felt the need. Strength wasn't a priority for a necromancer, but without any undead under his command, Michael was still essentially operating as a fake one. Then, there was his agility. It increased by an entire point, bringing my agility to nearly 6 times that of an average human. I'm probably not inferior in speed to most level 8-10 monsters, unless they're specialized in agility. Michael felt confident in his assessment. Since monsters lacked attribute points and relied solely on their race for stat boosts, even a level 5 monster specialized in speed might barely edge him out in agility, if at all. For one, I haven't seen any monsters other than slimes in this building. For now, I don't need to increase my speed since it's already sufficient, Michael thought, moving on to the next stat, his constitution. Without hesitation, he added 1 point to his constitution, raising it to 5 times that of an average human. The reasoning was simple. More vitality meant he'd be harder to kill. Plus, seeing his attribute points at even numbers was visually satisfying. There wasn't much to say about his intelligence stat. For now, it remained largely useless. One intriguing aspect of stats was that, when a stat related to one's class reached increments of 20 points, there was a 50% chance of gaining a new skill. Sometimes, one could even gain skills related to other, unrelated stats for every 20-point increase. However, a 50% chance didn't guarantee a skill every 40 points. One could potentially accumulate 100 points in a stat without receiving any skill. With his 13 attribute points, Michael could have invested in intelligence to try unlocking a skill, but it would be a risky gamble. If he failed, there'd be no undoing it. Even though Necromancer Awakeners are rare, I doubt I'm the first whose starting location has made it inconvenient to have an undead. There should be a solution on the Supers Association forum. I'll check it out once I'm back. Ultimately, Michael decided to save his attribute points for later when he'd truly need them. His current strength was already sufficient. Closing his panel, he approached the corpse of the acid slime. Unfortunately, the only loot he found was the acid slime core, no spirit crystal this time. Michael wasn't too disappointed. He'd anticipated it. If spirit crystals were common, they wouldn't be so precious. Stashing the acid slime core in his mark of origin, Michael set off in search of more monsters. Chapter 22. Chapter 22, Clearing the Space. 4. 2 hours later. After thoroughly searching the abandoned building, Michael managed to kill 13 more slimes and leveled up. Unfortunately, even with this number, The experience he gained wasn't enough to raise his level by more than 1. As his level increased, it began to match that of the slimes in the building. The extra bonus experience points he earned from defeating higher-level monsters had little impact, as the strongest slime he encountered was only level 7. Most of the slimes Michael fought ranged from level 4 to level 5. Still, Michael wasn't discouraged. At least he wasn't in significant danger while leveling up. It was well known that as one's level increased, it became progressively harder to advance. There were 2 main reasons for this. 1. The risk factor. Fighting stronger monsters carried greater risks. Most Awakeners avoided recklessly endangering their lives and instead preferred steady, gradual growth. After all, they had time and no inherent bottlenecks. Sooner or later, their accumulated experience would lead to leveling up. 2. Scaling challenges. As Awakeners grew stronger, so did the monsters. The advantage provided by attribute points diminished over time. For instance, common-grade monsters could only reach a maximum of level 21 with 3 stars. Any monster that could reach above level 21 was a rare-grade monster species, and the difficulty only escalated as their levels increased. While attribute points could allow Awakeners to compete with rare-grade monsters, they became insufficient against higher-grade foes. Of course, none of this had much relevance to Michael at the moment. He was satisfied that he had managed to reach level 5. The slimes also provided him with 4 spirit crystals and a good haul of slime cores. But these weren't his greatest gains. After killing the final slime, Michael finally discovered the exit to the building he was trapped in. The exit was wide open, revealing more abandoned buildings in the distance. Some of these structures had partially crumbled into dust, while others were overgrown with thick grass. Roots sprouted from the walls, similar to the building Michael was currently in. It was clear these buildings had been abandoned for a long time. Despite the temptation to leave, Michael didn't take a single step toward the exit. No, he didn't even dare approach it. Outside the exit was a staircase, and at the base of it stood a statue that blended seamlessly with the environment. If not for his caution and curiosity prompting him to use Detect on the statue, Michael might have overlooked its peculiarity. No, more likely, he would have died. Gargoyle LV 21. Rank Rare. An old gargoyle, weakened after years of neglect. A gargoyle, a creature once thought to exist only in fiction back in his previous world, now stood just 20 meters away from him. However, this one was wingless, but that was the least of Michael's concerns. I'm cooked, he thought bitterly. His experience in the land of origin seemed cursed enough to rank among the top 100 most unfortunate starts for new Awakeners this year. First, he nearly died to a slime. And now, it turned out the slimes were merely appetizers for the main course. Trapped in what he assumed was an abandoned dormitory, Michael's options were limited. He considered making the holes in the roof bigger and climbing his way out. With his current strength, he could likely jump high enough to reach the roof. But this plan had its risks. For one, the noise could attract attention. Perhaps the gargoyle outside had noticed him but refrained from attacking because he was already inside the building it guarded. Even if he escaped unnoticed, what guarantee did he have that there weren't other monsters, possibly even stronger ones, lurking nearby? A rank 1, level 11 monster like the gargoyle was already far beyond him. Adding more threats to the mix wasn't a gamble he wanted to take. I want my slimes back. Michael wanted to scream in frustration but held back, mindful of the gargoyle outside the building. Though he suspected the gargoyle might not come after him, he'd been in this building for hours, occasionally making noise. It wasn't a risk worth taking. Despite the dire situation, Michael wasn't in complete despair. At least he was still alive, and as long as that remained true, he could devise a way out. As thoughts raced through his mind, Michael made his way back to the spot where he'd first appeared. For some reason, this location always gave him a faint sense of comfort and security. Time to go back home. After several hours of running around, even though he was much stronger now, Michael was both physically and mentally drained. He carefully scanned his surroundings, ensuring no threats lurked nearby that could ambush his defenseless body. Only then did he sit down in a corner, taking out an energy nutrient from the Supers Association store. Ugh, tastes awful. But at least you won't starve, buddy, he muttered, patting himself as he swallowed the bitter liquid. Time to go back and look for solutions to my unwanted problems. Once ready, Michael disconnected his consciousness from the land of origin. Back in Aurora, his eyes slowly opened. FCK? Author's note. Good day, beautiful readers. Yes, I'm talking to you. Hee. This marks the end of Volume 1 for evolving my Undead Legion in a game-like world. Over the past 20 chapters, I've worked hard to establish a solid foundation for both worlds, the mechanics, and the main character. Starting from Volume 2, the story picks up pace as we dive deeper into the main plot lines. Michael will gain explosive strength and finally gets to use his talent while preparing for the Awakeners Academy exams. Thank you so much for making it this far. I hope you'll continue this journey with me. I have so much in store for all of us. Also, please share your thoughts about Volume 1. What could have been done better, what you liked or disliked, and what you're looking forward to in Volume 2. Chapter 23. Chapter 23 Posting on the Forum. Michael felt conflicted about his first day in the land of origin. On one hand, it had been exciting. He had narrowly survived being killed by a slime, escaping disfigurement by sheer luck. On the other hand, it was downright terrible. His first battle had been a life-and-death struggle against one of the weakest species, a slime, and just as things seemed to improve, he encountered an even bigger boss. Is this what they mean by being at the gate of heaven yet unable to enter? He muttered, still lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling in silence. But despite the chaos, Michael couldn't deny one thing. However, it wasn't like there weren't any gains. Though his first experience in the other world left much to be desired, it gave him what he sought, strength. Status. Name, Michael Norman. Class, Necromancer Apprentice. Level, 5, 4 carat. EXP, 114 out of 800. Strength, 2.5, 1.2 carat. Agility, 6.4, 5.0 carat. Constitution, 4.3, 3.1 carat. Intelligence, 8.5, 4.0 carat. Attribute points, 18. Skills, Undead Summoning, Undead Revival, Detect New. Basic Shot New. Talent, Infinite Evolution. Class Skill, Contract Slot 0 tenths. Gift, Mark of Origin. Michael had only been in the land of origin for about 3 hours, yet compared to yesterday, when he first awakened, his growth was astonishing. Those seniors on the forum were so right. The land of origin is no game, even though it looks like one, but it's truly an amazing place, he muttered in awe. A second later, his mood dipped into depression. Yet, even with all this growth, I still don't have any undead as a necromancer. My supposed highest stat, intelligence, is about to be overtaken by agility. Am I really a necromancer? Or am I becoming an assassin instead? Pausing, he chuckled bitterly. No, scratch that. I should be an archer. My only working skill is basic shot, and it doesn't even use mana. It's a physical skill fueled by stamina. Michael mockingly shook his head in helplessness as he stood and stretched his stiff muscles. Afterward, he grabbed his phone from the desk. 3:07, he read. That's roughly 3 hours spent in the land of origin. I left here a little after noon, and it was approaching noon there before I left. Aurora's time is probably 3 to 4 hours ahead. Of course, the time zones of Aurora and the land of origin were unrelated, being completely different worlds. Still, Michael used the time difference as an estimate. With that thought lingering, Michael sat in the chair by his desk and logged into the Supers Association forum on his phone. This time, he wasn't just searching for answers. He planned to ask directly. Michael had too many uncertainties, and searching blindly for solutions without even knowing the right terms felt like trying to find a rumored treasure in the middle of an ocean. Conflicting first day in the land of origin. Michael began by detailing his experiences, his initial location, the eerie ruins, and how, as a necromancer, his environment didn't offer any way to have an undead. He also explained the challenge posed by the rank 1 monster blocking his path and sought advice on what to do next. The Supers Association reportedly had over 70,000 awakeners. Though Michael wasn't sure how many were online, the forum currently showed 10,000 active users. Surely, among them, someone, awakener, or even cultivator, would have advice for his predicament. As Michael waited for his post to be verified, he browsed the forum to pass the time. He had barely reached the homepage when a trending topic caught his attention. Changes in the Federation. Huh? What's this? Michael muttered, intrigued. Changes in the Federation? He repeated thoughtfully, recalling something he had pondered back in the land of origin. The Federation's focus on Awakeners had always seemed odd to him. Most people, especially younger generations, only knew that the Federation valued Awakeners. The exact reasons remained unclear. They were also made to believe that cultivators were comparable to Awakeners, with the primary distinction being cultivation speed. However, as a new Awakener, Michael already knew this was inaccurate. He didn't claim to be an expert on cultivators, but access to the forum had expanded his understanding. For instance, a Rank 2 Knight Elite, supposedly 10 times stronger than the average human, could easily be matched by a level 5 Awakener who hadn't even advanced yet. In his view, cultivators were barely comparable to Awakeners if they refrained from using attribute points. This was an undeniable gap, yet the public was deliberately led to believe otherwise. Michael suspected this misinformation served a purpose. Perhaps it was to prevent despair among those who failed to awaken, or maybe it aimed to avoid creating an intense social divide between Awakeners and cultivators. This social divide was evident on the forum, but in the real world, most people likely saw Awakeners and cultivators as only slightly different, both possessing great powers but nothing vastly superior. All of this seemed suspicious, and Michael felt certain only the Federation knew the truth. Now, staring at the trending topic, curiosity got the better of him. He tapped the post. Chapter 24 Thoughts. The post's author was a Level 2 member of the Supers Association, one rank above Michael. It had also been published just a day ago, taking that time to gain enough traction to trend on the forum. Changes in the Federation. Name, Billy Storman. Level 2. Date published. Thursday, 18th of the 7th month, year 228 of the new era, 1 day ago. I'm a mage commander studying at the Moonstone Cultivation Academy. A week ago, I returned home for vacation. Normally, when the academy grants a break to prepare for incoming college exams, we older students usually choose one of two options: spend some time with our families before resuming training or head straight to the dimensional cracks for training. However, this post isn't about that. Since I have 3 months of vacation, I decided to spend some of it with my family, given I missed the opportunity last year. But to my surprise, when I got home, I noticed something strange. Whenever I come back, my younger siblings typically ask me ignorant questions about Awakeners and cultivators. This time, however, they seemed to know more than I did before entering the academy. At first, I worried they had been dabbling in illegal channels to access classified information. But I quickly learned that their school had started teaching them this new knowledge. Curious, I asked some of my schoolmates who also went home for the break. They reported similar changes in their siblings' schools, though it seemed this was happening mainly in big cities, for now. I'm confused. Wasn't the Federation the one restricting information about supernatural professions, especially for children? Why are they suddenly releasing it now? If you check iTube, you'll find videos containing information we couldn't access in high school. I'm not personally affected, but I'm curious. Does anyone know what's going on? After reading the post, Michael's heart grew slightly heavy. The content of the post touched on something he had considered before. Seeing that others seemed to share his suspicions, or at least that his doubts were partially validated, left Michael deep in thought. Even the mention of the Moonstone Cultivation Academy, the first time he had encountered the name of a supernatural institute, failed to hold much of Michael's attention. In a way, this highlighted how severely information about the supernatural had been suppressed in this world. For students who began cultivating at a young age to remain unaware of the names of colleges they could potentially attend was telling. This kind of reminds me of those cultivation novels I read back on Earth, Michael thought. In those worlds, mortals knew of the existence of immortals, but anything beyond that was treated as forbidden or rare knowledge. The Federation has been suppressing information about Awakeners and cultivators for so long, so why are they changing now? As a transmigrator, Michael had spent some time reflecting on the nature of this world, despite having been here for just over 3 weeks. Since his awakening, Michael had often wondered. Awakeners and cultivators were supposedly respected members of society, yet strangely little was known about them or their way of life. Occasionally, there were glimpses, videos, for instance, but even those were superficial. From Michael's current perspective, they appeared designed to mislead the public rather than inform them. The information taught in schools about awakeners and cultivators was even more lacking than he initially imagined. What was provided was the barest minimum, and while it might have seemed like a lot to the former Michael, the awakened Michael now saw how insignificant it truly was. If Michael had transmigrated as an adult without memories of this world, he might have initially thought it was simply a technologically advanced version of Earth. This realization underscored how, despite being a driving force in society, awakeners and cultivators were almost invisible. Perhaps this felt normal to most people in this world since it had always been this way for them. However, as a transmigrator, Michael's perspective was different. Initially, he hadn't bothered much about the situation since he wasn't even sure if he'd be able to awaken a class. If he had failed to awaken, and the Federation continued the way it did, the Federation's suppression of information would have ensured he remained ignorant about the supernatural, just like the majority of citizens. This was why the post he had just read struck Michael so deeply. He had two pressing questions. 1. Why had information about awakeners and cultivators been suppressed for so long? 2. Why was information being released now? What is happening in the Federation? Chapter 25. Chapter 25 Truth of the World. As several thoughts flashed through Michael's mind, he scrolled to the comment section under the post. I knew something like this was going to happen sooner or later. Though I get the Federation's point of view due to the tragic events of the past, they need to remember that they're raising humans. People, not animals in a cage. Those dogs have been in power for so long that it's gone to their heads. I agree with Senior's words, though I wouldn't dare to be as blunt. Haha. New cultivator here. What were the tragic events that happened in the past? Are they the reason the Federation suppresses news about us? One particular comment caught Michael's attention. First, it was the audacity of the writer that stood out, though Michael decided to wisely ignore it, as it came from a level 5 member. Second, it was the content that truly intrigued him. Tragic events? What events could have possibly made the Federation so determined to suppress news about us? Curious, Michael continued reading the thread with heightened focus. After the new cultivator asked for guidance, another level 5 member stepped in to reply. Before I answer, let me ask you this. What happens when you put poor and rich people together in the same space? A social structure forms, Senior. And this social structure, who does it benefit? The rich, Senior. Exactly. To put it simply, the rich oppress the poor, directly or indirectly. And this is for something as mundane as wealth. Now, what do you think happens when you put people with supernatural powers alongside ordinary humans who depend on them to survive? Back in the Dark Ages, a year after the dimensional cracks appeared and unleashed monsters, humanity's population plummeted to just 100 million. This and a few other things are what the kids nowadays are aware of. In truth, they know nothing at all. It was at the point of close extinction hope came. The arrival of awakeners gave humanity a fighting chance, and years later, the cultivators followed. This was the turning point when humans began to fight back. During those desperate times, survival was the priority, and there was little concern for status. However, as the situation improved, things changed. Ordinary humans idolized the supernaturals, and the supernaturals began to see themselves as superior. This mindset grew stronger as humanity stabilized. Awakeners and cultivators began treating ordinary humans as lesser beings, and ordinary humans, in turn, accepted this dynamic. It wasn't uncommon back then for a cultivator to kill an ordinary human out of anger, and both sides would see it as normal. Over time, things worsened. Some supernaturals turned into demonic beings, demonic cultivators, or awakeners. One powerful mage once sacrificed 1 million lives, and that was among the lesser tragedies. Others committed far worse atrocities. Oh, you might curse those demonic supernaturals, but remember, before they fell to darkness, they were once humans too. Even you can't deny that, with your powers, you've started to see yourself as superior to others. Reading this made Michael's heart heavy. The Senior was right. Slowly but surely, he had begun to see himself as superior, not to humans, but to cultivators. Yet, if he viewed himself as above cultivators, who were already higher than ordinary humans, wasn't he essentially agreeing that ordinary people were beneath him? With a heavy heart, Michael continued reading. He now knew what the previous level 5 member meant by tragic events of the past. Yet, this still didn't fully explain why the Federation suppressed knowledge about awakeners and cultivators. When demonic cultivators grew more rampant, the powerful figures in the government stepped in to suppress them. But here's the brutal truth. We are indeed superior to ordinary humans. Denying this would be hypocrisy. And because of this superiority, the Federation decided to prevent another crisis by isolating ordinary humans from supernatural matters while creating a separate space for us. They suppressed news about supernatural's powers so ordinary people wouldn't realize the vast difference between them and subconsciously consider themselves inferior, just as in the Dark Ages. At the same time, they worked to redirect supernatural's focus away from meddling in ordinary people's lives. This led to the creation of two worlds, one for supernaturals and another for ordinary humans. Even cultivator trainees below college level are taught only how to cultivate, with martial discipline imposed on them much like ordinary humans. This created a sense of equality, and the method worked for decades, preventing the rise of demonic supernaturals. But alas, it also made us weaker as a whole. Billy Stormman, thanks for answering, seniors. We were taught about this in school, but I'm still confused. How does suppressing information about us make us weaker overall? And what does this have to do with the Federation releasing bits of information now? After reading the senior Level 5 member's words, Michael fell into deep thought. It was only after a while that he snapped out of it. Demonic awakeners and cultivators, the Dark Age, and the Federation's actions. I'm truly ignorant of the world I'm in. Michael's heart felt heavy. The senior's words revealed that he was surrounded by a fog of ignorance. Fortunately, as an awakener, he could slowly clear this fog and learn more about the truth of the world. Turning his attention back to the comments, Michael couldn't help but reflect. Though we were taught about the Dark Age in school, it was definitely not as revealing as this. The saying that history is written by the victors is true. Who knows how much of what we were taught as history is actually the truth? The more he discovered about the public's ignorance of the world they lived in, the heavier his heart grew. To some extent, he could relate to the senior's frustration. While he understood the Federation's desire to avoid creating an obvious social structure between supernaturals and ordinary humans, it also felt like they were treating humans like livestock. This realization left Michael conflicted. The Federation, which once seemed like the good guys, now felt much more ambiguous. Demonic cultivators. The senior said they were suppressed, not eradicated. Could they still exist somewhere in this world? The sense of security Michael once felt in the real world began to crumble. The waters of this world are indeed too deep. Aside from this revelation, Michael felt an even greater need to become stronger. My greatest strength is my class, so I can't leave the matter of undead unattended for long. My leveling speed is still too slow. And then there's the college exams to prepare for. Though I question the authenticity of these institutions after learning about the Federation's actions, Billy's comment under the senior's post shows there's still much to learn from them. But compared to my peers who awakened 2 years ago, and even those who awakened last year, I'm far behind. With only 3 months of preparation, there's little to no time. Michael clenched his fists, determination welling up within him. I must get stronger. As several thoughts flashed through Michael's mind, he turned his attention back to the comment section. There was something the senior had said that left him confused. We're weaker overall. Thankfully, Billy, the author of the post, had asked the same question, and another individual, though not a level 5 member this time, but a level 3, responded. By saying we're weak overall, what the senior meant is that the public no longer has a strong drive for strength. You might think they do, but they don't. What happens in a world where the poor don't feel much different from the rich? Will they strive for wealth as a goal, or simply for convenience? I've visited the martial arts cultivator world before, and the commoners there are deeply oppressed by those in power. But compared to people in our world, those so-called commoners hunger for power with an intensity that moved me. Unlike here, where an 18-year-old who has failed their awakening will give up on gaining strength and settle for getting by in society. I agree with the senior. If the public truly knew the extent of awakeners and cultivators' power, and felt it, they'd hunger for it. That hunger would, in turn, boost our national strength. But in recent years, the number of new cultivators has been steadily declining. Perhaps the Federation can no longer ignore this, and is being forced to take action. reminding the public of the supernatural elements available in their world. Our world is not as safe as the public believes. You, as a student of an academy, should know this better than anyone. Use every moment to grow stronger, for yourself, your loved ones, and our people. May the will of Aurora prevail for 1,000,000 years. Billy Stormman, thank you for your advice. May the will of Aurora prevail for 1,000,000 years. Chapter 26. Chapter 26 New Understanding. May the will of Aurora prevail for 1,000,000 years. The sentence felt like a slogan, stirring something deep within Michael. Even the revelation of the Level 3 member traveling to another world didn't catch much of his attention. In school, they were taught that some dimensional cracks from the Dark Age still remained. While most led to places filled with monsters, a few opened gateways to other realms like Aurora. They had also been told that these monsters were a significant reason why cultivators and awakeners were vital to society. Yet, the seriousness of it all had eluded him back then, as the topic was presented in a light, almost casual manner. Even combat classes felt more like physical education than actual preparation for life-threatening situations. Reading the comment section under Billy's post, however, shattered that illusion. Michael realized that reality was far harsher than what they were taught. Aurora wasn't safe. Whether the threat came from monsters, demonic supernaturals, or something else entirely, he didn't know. But one thing was clear, he needed strength. Whatever the Federation's motives were for gradually unveiling the truth to the public, Michael understood that he had to be ready for whatever followed. He tried to dig deeper into the comments, hoping to find more insights about the Federation's actions, but nothing else was as informative as the comments from the seniors. Most were either empty speculations or cheap imitations of what had already been said. Realizing he wouldn't find anything more useful, Michael dismissed the post. Curious about the truth of the world he lived in, Michael began searching for topics he had never considered before. His first search focused on the Dark Age, but the information available mirrored what he had been taught in school. However, when he searched for demonic supernaturals, he discovered new insights. Thankfully, his Level 1 membership granted him access to this information. For one, his suspicion that demonic supernaturals still existed was confirmed. Michael learned that both the Federation and students from Cultivation and Awakener academies occasionally hunted them. However, details about their recent actions or larger operations remained inaccessible to him. Still, knowing they were still a threat made his heart grow heavier. Next, Michael delved into dimensional cracks. Beyond the simplified descriptions given in school, where they were portrayed as harmless as neighboring countries, he discovered that the reality was much grimmer. It wasn't the monster-filled cracks that posed the greatest danger to Aurora, but those leading to other realms. These cracks introduced him to a new term: invader invasions. Michael learned that some civilizations on the other side of these cracks sought to expand their control over Aurora, resulting in ongoing wars. This revelation shocked him. Despite the end of the Dark Age, Aurora was far from safe. The public's ignorance was protected by the sacrifices of others, who fought wars that few could properly appreciate. Unfortunately, Michael's low authority level once again restricted his access to more information. Still, he gleaned enough to know that Academy students like himself were regarded as reserve soldiers for the Federation, tasked with defending Aurora from both internal and external threats alongside the military. Having frequently encountered references to supernatural academies in his searches, Michael made them his next research topic. In a few minutes, he learned more about his world than he had in all his years at school. This world isn't safe. I need strength to protect myself and my family. The Federation seems to have reached a dead end. I can only rely on myself. In the end, it all comes down to strength. With strength, the road ahead will be clearer. But even now, there are things I can and must do. Michael listed his priorities. First, I need to start fully utilizing my class advantages. Necromancers are known for having one of the fastest leveling speeds, as they earn a percentage of the experience from enemies killed by their summons. My class is also one of the strongest, capable of functioning as a one-man army, much like a beast tamer in the later stages. Wasting this potential would be foolish. Having an undead could also be the turning point for me to finally make use of my talent. I really hope it is. Then there's the college exam. With my current strength, getting into a top Awakener academy is a pipe dream. Only cultivation academies might accept me due to my identity as an awakener. But since this directly impacts my growth and access to information, I have to take it seriously. Lastly, I need to find a solution for the ruins I'm trapped in within the land of origin. If I don't, my growth will be even slower. After setting these goals, Michael finally turned his attention to his present situation. The Super Association system had notified him minutes ago that his post was approved, but he had been too engrossed in his research to check it. He hadn't expected immediate responses anyway, and decided to wait. Returning to his post, Michael was shocked to find it had garnered over 30 comments and a surprising amount of traction, more than 3,000 views in just half an hour. The unexpected popularity stunned him. "I hope I can find something useful," Michael muttered as he opened the comments section, only to be taken aback again. To his surprise, nearly no one seemed concerned about his struggles as a necromancer. Instead, the majority were fixated on his initial location, ignoring the topic of his post entirely. "I don't know if I should call you lucky or unlucky. Lucky because you somehow stumbled into a ruin every awakener prays for, and unlucky because you're too weak to explore it, stopped by a mere level 21 monster." A level 21 monster weak? Oi, that's a rank 1 monster close to the limit. Michael thought, feeling both attacked and embarrassed. Despite the sting, the comment made him pause. Ruins. Michael had read novels back on Earth where such places brimmed with treasures. But back in the land of origin, he hadn't been thinking about ruins. His focus had been on scouring dorm rooms for mist slimes, not the ancient significance of his surroundings. Curious, Michael continued reading other comments. Gargoyles are artificially created monsters, so it's almost certain you're in a ruin. As 3-star rare-grade monsters, their weakest are usually around level 20. Given your description of the ruin, it's clearly very old. Gargoyles don't lose levels even after 50 years, so the ruin you're in is at least 200 years old. The older the ruin, the more valuable its treasures. I'd say you're lucky, kid. Just don't die there before enhancing your strength by leveling up in real life. This comment, far more informative, caught Michael's attention. Checking the commenter's profile, he saw they were a level 4 member. Michael's curiosity deepened. He had recently searched for the meaning behind the Super Association's member levels and now understood their significance. Level 1 members, unranked to rank 1 awakeners, and rank 1-2 cultivators, apprentice, and elite. Level 2 members, rank 2 awakeners, and rank 3-4 cultivators, commander, and master. Level 3 members, rank 3 awakeners, and rank 5 cultivators, king level. Level 4 members, rank 4 awakeners, and rank 6 cultivators, emperor level. Level 5 members, rank 5 awakeners, and rank 7 cultivators, demigod level. Realizing this, Michael felt a newfound respect for the seniors in the forum. Those level 5 members were akin to demigods in strength. They truly deserved to be addressed with such reverence. With his current power, Michael couldn't even begin to fathom the strength of a being addressed as a demigod. He also noticed a distinct pattern. Starting from rank 5 in the cultivation power system, king level, the gap between awakeners and cultivators began to narrow. An awakener rank was no longer comparable to 2 cultivator ranks, at least on the surface. Perhaps cultivators experienced a significant boost at king level, but Michael wasn't worried. Awakeners wouldn't stagnate either. They grew stronger with each rank advancement. Of course, a king-level cultivator was still far beyond Michael's reach and deserving of respect. The awakener who responded to his post was a level 4 member, making them comparable to an emperor-level cultivator, just below the demigod rank. As an awakener, they might even stand a chance against a demigod. It was clear this level 4 member was a senior as well. Michael hurriedly gave his thanks. Fortunately, I wasn't desperate enough to do something reckless. I might have missed this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Michael thought. Dying in the land of origin came with heavy consequences. Not only did one lose 10% of their stats permanently, but their location also changed. If Michael died in the ruin, he could kiss it goodbye. The senior's advice also reminded him of something he'd read earlier about dimensional cracks. These cracks were under Federation supervision, and gaining access required either Super's Association membership or Academy enrollment. While Michael wasn't an Academy student, his Super's Association membership granted him access to cracks within his member level's limit. This realization gave him hope. Now that he had clarity on his location, Michael shifted focus to the next issue. Fortunately, someone among these ruin-obsessed awakeners remembered I'm a necromancer in distress. Chapter 27. Hey bro, fellow undead user here, haha. Funny thing is, I ended up in a situation just like yours, stuck in a location where I couldn't even get an undead. It was near the outskirts of a kingdom's capital, right where the headquarters of a massive religion and their pope reside. I'd have been deader than dead if I tried summoning an undead there. Honestly, your situation isn't that bad. Just head to the Supers Association and buy a monster corpse. It's not even that expensive. The cheapest ones go for about 3,000 at least, so it's pretty affordable. Since I had the funds, I bought several level 10 monster corpses, haha. You can also check out the monster breeding centers in your area, but they usually sell corpses for way more than the Supers Association does. Michael checked the name of the commenter. Leo Vanni Lorenzio. The name was quite fancy. Leo Vanni was also a level 1 member, just like Michael. CTH Unified et website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. From the tone and first sentence of Leo Vanni's comment, Michael deduced this bro was likely a peer, a fellow new awakener. Whether this bro was 16, 17, or perhaps even his exact age was unknown to Michael, though he couldn't care less. What mattered most was the comment's helpfulness. Why didn't I think of this? Michael muttered, tapping his forehead. Of course, the Supers Association would be a good solution for getting an undead. He shook his head, feeling helpless that such an obvious solution hadn't occurred to him before. While Michael didn't know that the Supers Association sold corpses, as it wasn't something listed in their forum store, they could undoubtedly grant him access to places where acquiring a monster corpse wouldn't be an issue, such as dimensional cracks. With their access to dimensional cracks, it also made sense that the association would have access to monster corpses. As for breeding centers, though unfamiliar with them, Michael wasn't surprised by their existence. Almost every teenager under 18 aspired to either become an awakener or a cultivator. However, most were realistic enough to understand that awakening was left to fate, making cultivation the hot choice. As a result, nearly all students practiced some form of cultivation. Though the Federation suppressed information about awakeners and cultivators, a few videos still leaked. While they didn't reveal the full extent of their powers, the fact that the strongest unofficial cultivation apprentices were twice as strong as the average human was enough to inspire young people. Maybe if they knew there were strong cultivators who could crush monsters 100 feet tall, they'd take cultivation more seriously, Michael thought. But with the Federation now releasing more information about supernaturals, perhaps more students would grow interested in cultivation and take it seriously under the allure of supreme power. Returning to the topic of breeding centers, Michael wasn't shocked by their existence. In city malls, beast meat, a cultivation resource for apprentices, was openly sold, clearly sourced from monsters. If such products were available, it stood to reason that breeding centers for monsters existed too. Still, Michael was more familiar with the Supers Association than breeding centers. Until now, he hadn't even been aware breeding centers existed. Like most people, he had assumed beast meat came from dead monsters, not ones bred like livestock. After all, to the general public, monsters were nothing more than enemies. Are monster corpses really this expensive? Michael muttered, his eyes twitching slightly. At $3,000 per corpse, he questioned whether the $15,000 monthly benefit he received would even be enough to buy 5. Worse still, with intermediate mastery of Undead Revival only offering a 50% success rate, there was a significant chance that a large chunk of his money could be wasted. This is a bit too rich for me, he sighed. For someone born and raised in poverty, Leo Vanni was wealthy in Michael's eyes. A level 10 monster corpse wasn't going to be cheap, yet this rich guy had bought 10 at once and called it affordable. It was clear that this bro was some sort of young master. Even so, Michael was grateful for Leo Vanni's advice. The comment had helped him clear his thoughts significantly. Leo Vanni was also the only person, aside from the senior who had advised him about the ruins, to offer practical help. After sending his thanks to Leo Vanni, Michael logged out of the Supers Association forum and leaned back in his chair. Somehow, I feel like I forgot something, Michael thought, though he dismissed the feeling after a few seconds. If it was important, it would come back to him later. His head was still buzzing from everything he had learned on the forum, leaving no room for minor distractions. Michael rested for about 10 minutes before getting up. It was close to 4 p.m., a perfect time to still head out. Now that he knew how to solve his undead summoning issue, he felt impatient. Deciding to freshen up to wash away some of the mental exhaustion from the land of origin, Michael prepared to visit the local Supers Association branch. I should sell some of my loot while I'm there. I'm broke. So broke. After leaving his apartment, Michael was fortunate to find a cab quickly to take him to the Supers Association. While waiting briefly for transportation, he had an impulsive thought: to run to the association at full speed and play superhero, recreating the Flash in this world. However, laziness won out in the end. That, and the very real possibility of injuring someone along the way. Michael didn't want the Federation breathing down his neck. Perhaps that was why other Awakeners also kept a low profile, as there were no reports of anyone openly showing off their powers in public. Still, he wondered if things might change once the Federation released more information about Awakeners and Cultivators. Perhaps they might have their rights improved, and maybe he could even use a mount-type undead in broad daylight one day. Chapter 28. The journey to the Supers Association was uneventful. However, Michael found himself growing paranoid due to his newfound knowledge of demonic supernaturals. Before entering the cab, he even used Detect on the driver. The result was almost the same as with every other person he scanned along the way. Level 1 human. It was unsurprising, as non-Awakeners lacked attribute points and were likely judged solely by their race. Michael recalled that a human level up granted plus 0.2 to all stats and plus 0.5 to intelligence. By level 11, a human's average stats would match those of a new official night cultivator, roughly twice as strong as the average person. Coincidentally, this corresponded with the first rank in the night cultivator system. However, Michael wasn't entirely certain about the level representation of non-Awakeners when using Detect. It was possible that a level 10 human was more than just a human leveling up 9 times. Until confirmed, it wouldn't be wise to assume someone's prowess solely based on the level displayed. Michael was also lucky to even encounter a middle-aged man in his late 30s, the only level 11 human he met during the trip. He remembered reading on the forum when he read about members' level that only Awakeners and official cultivators under the age of 20, with rare exceptions above that age, had access to the Supers Association forum. It was noted in bold that individuals in their 30s rarely had access. It was evident that those lacking cultivation talent were left to live average lives. The Federation likely saw no benefit in sharing core supernatural knowledge with them, avoiding unnecessary risks. From this perspective, Michael found himself agreeing with the Federation's approach. He could easily imagine how panicked his aunt, who had lived her entire life in ignorance, would feel upon learning the truth about the world at her age. Would it be the crushing realization of her lack of talent that devastated her? Or the fear that her children might become entangled in dangerous circumstances if they awakened or proved talented in cultivation? Michael's vivid imagination even suggested that such despair could be exploited by demonic cultivators to recruit fresh blood. Humans, after all, were complex beings capable of compromising their morals to fulfill their desires. Yet, Michael also recognized another side to the issue. If people like his aunt had been exposed to these truths earlier in life, while still young enough to adapt, they might have grown accustomed to it, just as those who lived through the Dark Age had learned to endure suppression under the supernaturals. Slowly, Michael began to understand the seniors who sighed at Aurora's current state. It was becoming increasingly clear that over 90% of its residents were delicate greenhorns, fragile enough to crumble under the slightest pressure. In this regard, Earth had an edge over Aurora. Back on Earth, even young children were aware of the world's harsh realities. In emergencies, widespread panic was less likely to erupt among Earth's population. But Michael wasn't as confident about Aurora. If the truth was revealed or a crisis arose, it might lead to an increase in demonic supernaturals instead. SEO are the novelful.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. It wasn't impossible. While some people might be inspired to work harder after witnessing part of the full extent of a cultivator's power, potentially increasing the nation's strength and reducing pressure on the front lines, which was likely the Federation's goal. Others, especially the less talented, could succumb to desperation. Demonic cultivators might exploit this desperation, offering forbidden methods to gain strength and seducing the vulnerable into their ranks. It wasn't impossible. How many people back on Earth had committed terrible acts due to poverty? If the absence of wealth could drive such actions, the lack of supernatural power could potentially lead to even worse outcomes. Anyway, the future was currently none of Michael's business. With his strength, he wasn't qualified to worry about it. If the sky fell, there were stronger people than him to hold it up. "Thanks for the ride," Michael said, paying his fare after scanning the payment code. "You're welcome," the driver replied politely. Without looking back, Michael made his way into the Supers Association. This was his second time personally entering the building. Just like yesterday, the exterior appeared quiet, but the interior was bustling with activity. Is it soundproofing magic or something? Michael wondered. Also, like yesterday, he noticed several young faces, likely new awakeners who had come to register today. As expected, there were fewer than yesterday. The notable difference was that most were casually dressed, unlike Michael and the others who had shown up in their uniforms the previous day. As he observed his surroundings, Michael lined up at the same queue leading to the receptionist who had assisted him during registration. Though they weren't particularly familiar, Michael preferred speaking with a familiar face about his matters. The queue wasn't long, so in about 20 minutes, he reached the receptionist. "Good evening," Michael greeted as they made eye contact. "Good evening, sir. How may I assist you today?" the lady replied with a professional, yet slightly more genuine smile, indicating she recognized him. Michael didn't waste time and went straight to the point. "Are there any monster corpses available at the association? Also, I'd like to sell something," he said. While purchases could be made directly from the store in the forum, items were often available for immediate pickup at the association itself. However, selling could only be done in person at the association. "We do have monster corpses here, sir, but this isn't the right spot to inquire about them," the receptionist replied calmly, her expression showing no sign of surprise at the question. "Ah, I see. My apologies. Where should I go?" Michael asked softly, feeling a bit embarrassed for wasting her time. With a sweet smile, the receptionist pointed in a specific direction and provided clear instructions. "You'll find a counter with a sign that says Trade Center. That's where you can buy and sell whatever you need." "Thank you," Michael said sincerely. The receptionist nodded in acknowledgement, and Michael immediately headed toward the Trade Center. The Supers Association branch building was quite large, but it wasn't difficult to locate the area. The Trade Center resembled a shop, with a wide window counter behind which sat a middle-aged man reading a book. The man's face bore a long, hideous scar, instantly sparking Michael's curiosity. Subconsciously, Michael activated Detect as soon as he came within 10 meters, half of the skill's current range limit. Level? Human. Huh. Michael froze in surprise. As if sensing something, the scarred man suddenly looked up and locked eyes with him. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Michael's heart trembled. Chapter 29. Who is this? Did he notice I used Detect on him? Michael's heart pounded in shock, but he forced himself to remain calm as he continued toward the Trade Center. He couldn't be sure if the scarred man had sensed his use of Detect, but one thing was clear. This man was no ordinary individual. It wasn't just a matter of being 20 levels stronger. Even a rank 2 cultivator shouldn't evoke such an overwhelming reaction from him. Michael hadn't yet encountered a rank 2 cultivator face-to-face, but he doubted they could instill this level of unease. Another realization struck him. Detect's limitations seemed to extend to cultivators as well. Okay, maybe I'm getting too cocky. 20 levels above me is still 20 levels above me. As Michael reached the counter and opened his mouth to speak, the scarred man beat him to it. "It's quite rude to spy on others, young lad," the man said calmly, his piercing gaze fixed on Michael. "I don't mind, but others with a shorter temper might have taught you a lesson by now." Michael's heart jolted again. So he did sense it. Michael's emotions were anything but calm. He had suspected the man might have noticed, but hearing it confirmed sent chills down his spine. "I'm sorry, sir," Michael said sincerely, bowing slightly. He didn't feel wronged or insulted by the reprimand. It was indeed rude to spy on others. This interaction also raised questions. Just how strong was this man? Detect didn't rely on any form of energy, so it shouldn't have been easy to notice. Truly, even without the same potential as awakeners, cultivators are strong beings, Michael thought, silently chastising himself. He recalled using Detect on nearly everyone he encountered this evening, and cold sweat broke out on his back. Had he used it on someone with malicious intent who noticed him, he could have landed himself in serious trouble. Awakeners might possess great potential, but without actual strength, potential alone meant little. At level 5, Michael was still far too weak. "It's okay, just be careful," the man said, waving dismissively. Then, in a businesslike tone, he added, "So, what do you want?" Michael felt relief at the man's indifference and quickly complied, eager to move on. "I'd like a monster corpse, please, and I have something to sell as well," Michael said, reaching into his storage space and producing a spirit crystal. After purchasing items from the Supers Association store and giving his aunt $5,000, Michael had less than $5,000 left in his account. If he bought a monster corpse at $3,000 as Leo Vanni suggested, he could only afford one. Had he not given his aunt the money, he could have bought at least two. Still, Michael didn't regret helping Aunt Mia. After all, there was no guarantee that the money spent on an extra corpse would yield an undead. His Undead Revival, at Intermediate Mastery, only provided a 50% success rate, with up to 3 attempts per corpse. Even then, success wasn't assured. Perhaps this reasoning was a way to justify his decision, but it wasn't entirely false. "Oh, you're an Awakener? No wonder. Only your type spies like thieves," the middle-aged man said expressionlessly. "Actually holding a grudge, huh?" Michael thought, his eyelid twitching. He chose not to respond. The man's words revealed a lack of respect for Awakeners, unlike the admiration they often received on the forum. This suggested 2 possibilities. Either he despised them, or he was incredibly powerful. Either way, Michael decided it wasn't his concern. "Unranked spirit crystal?" The man examined the crystal briefly before adding, "This one's a bit stronger than usual. I'll offer you $17,500 for it. What do you think?" "Yes, please," Michael replied instantly. He was surprised by the man's ability to discern the crystal's energy level so easily. It had come from a level 7 slime, making it superior to lower-level crystals in the same rank. Michael had singled it out on a hunch, hoping to get a higher price, and his gamble paid off. "Okay, should I transfer the money to your account, or do you want to use it now to buy monster corpses?" the man asked as he placed the crystal into a box from beneath the counter. "I'll use it all," Michael replied without hesitation. Buying one corpse wasn't going to be enough. Except it was special. Despite parting with the money again, Michael felt satisfied with the straightforward transaction and the unexpected profit. "All right, go through that entrance," the man said, pointing to an open doorway beside the shop. Michael had noticed the entrance earlier, but assumed it led somewhere unrelated to the trade center. However, being within the Supers Association, Michael wasn't too concerned and followed the man's instructions. Apparently, the trade center had an exit leading to the corridor the doorway entrance led into. As Michael found himself following the scarred man after stepping through the doorway and walking forward a bit. After closing the trade center door, the man said nothing and simply led Michael further down the corridor. Michael wondered why the man wasn't concerned about leaving the trade center unattended, considering the goods like potions stored there. Soon, he dismissed the thought. Anyone brazen enough to steal within the association's territory deserved some respect. The corridor had several doors leading to unknown areas, likely storage rooms for other items. Eventually, they stopped in front of a door exuding a cold chill, reminiscent of a cold storage facility. CTHU novel, F. IRD NUT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The scarred man pressed his thumb against the doorknob, unlocking it. Inside was indeed a cold room with smaller compartments branching off. Breaking the silence since leaving the trade center, the scarred man finally spoke. "Woodstone City only has 3-dimensional cracks, 2 level 1 cracks and 1 level 2 crack. So we only stock level 1 and level 2 monster corpses. Which do you want? What level 1 monsters do you have?" Michael asked. Thanks to the Supers Association forum and his search this evening, Michael was a little knowledgeable about dimensional cracks now. He recalled that level 1 dimensional cracks only produced monsters at most equivalent to a peak rank 1 cultivator, while level 2 cracks produced monsters up to peak rank 2. Given his limited funds, Michael opted for the more affordable level 1 corpses. For level 1, we have forest wolves at $4,000 each and goblins at $1,000 each. Why are goblins so cheap? Goblins are weak, trash monsters with little value, the scarred man replied bluntly. Michael refrained from commenting, already growing accustomed to the man's bluntness. Can I choose the bodies myself? Michael asked, hoping to select corpses with higher star ratings, which meant higher level limits. Fortunately, the scarred man nodded in agreement. What monster do you want to start with? Let's start with the forest wolves. Chapter 30. Though the storage room was cold, Michael's constitution allowed him to endure it without much discomfort. The scarred man led Michael to a compartment containing the corpses of forest wolves. They were stored on bunked shelves, 2 bodies per shelf, with 6 rows in total, 12 corpses altogether. Michael wasn't sure if this was a large or small number, but it felt like the latter. He briefly wondered why the association kept monster corpses in the first place, but the scarred man's cold demeanor dissuaded him from asking. Eager to finally get his hands on material for creating his undead, Michael began using Detect on the forest wolf corpses. Forest Wolf LV2. Rank, Common. Dead. Forest Wolf LV4. Rank, Common. Dead. Forest Wolf LV5. Rank, Common. Dead. Forest Wolf LV2. Rank, Common. Dead. Michael's requirements weren't high. He simply needed a monster above 1 star. A 1-star common rank monster had a maximum level of 7, which was too weak, offering little advantage over his current strength. A 2-star common rank monster could reach rank 1 level 4, level 14, which was barely acceptable in his eyes. Michael hoped to find a 3-star corpse. However, while it would allow for growth to level 21, he knew that a level 21 common rank monster would be inferior to a 3-star rare rank monster of the same level like the gargoyle back in the land of origin. Rank wasn't just about potential, but also reflected racial superiority. Even within the same species, bloodlines could vary in nobility and strength. This was evident in the difference between harmless 1-star slimes and 2-star acid slimes. Michael didn't need a powerful 3-star rare-grade monster like the gargoyle that had halted his exploration in the land of origin. Not to mention his inability to kill one. Rare-grade monsters were rarely unranked, and even if they were said to rival Awakeners, even factoring in the advantage of attribute points. He doubted he could even afford one if the option existed. In his opinion, a few 1-star rare-grade monsters at the peak of rank 1, level 25, or in rank 2, above level 25, paired with several 3-star common grade undead at level 21, rank 1, level 11, should be enough to overwhelm the gargoyle, provided he planned well. Unfortunately, no 3-star forest wolf corpses were available, and even the 2-star corpses he found didn't exceed 3. In the end, Michael purchased the 3 2-star forest wolf corpses and stored them in his mark of origin. As for the goblins, Michael didn't even bother. According to a post that mentioned slimes, goblins were grouped in the same category. Goblins were barely better than slimes, excelling only in reproduction. Michael had no interest in wasting money on such weak monsters. What he didn't expect, however, was how his opinion about goblins, or any so-called weak species, was about to change. After leaving the storage room, Michael provided his account details to collect the remaining $5,500, which would raise his balance back above $10,000 once transferred. He decided not to sell the other 3 spirit crystals he had. They might prove useful after creating an undead, assuming his talent demonstrates something, or for replenishing mana during the revival process, which consumes a significant amount. Spirit crystals were a better option for recovery than waiting for natural regeneration or relying on mana stones, crystals, or potions. Michael also remembered the slime cores he'd collected and decided to check if they could be sold. Surprisingly, the association accepted them. SEO are the novel, F. IR.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. While slime cores weren't particularly valuable, selling for $100 each, Michael managed to earn $1,500 by selling 15 cores. As for why he hadn't sold them earlier alongside the spirit crystal, the reason was simple. he'd forgotten. The earlier event caused by him using Detect on the scarred man, followed by their rapid exchange, had shifted his focus. Unlike spirit crystals, he never considered slime cores important. After exchanging farewells, though the scarred man only responded with a nod, Michael quickly exited the association building and hailed a cab home. This time, unlike his earlier trip, Michael refrained from using Detect on everyone he encountered, now more cautious about his actions. Nearly an hour later, with no traffic, Michael arrived home faster than expected. After paying the cab fare, he hurried to his apartment, eager to enter the land of origin and finally summon an undead. Inside, he noticed his cousin Lily was back from school. She gave him a bewildered look as he greeted her in passing, clearly in a rush. Michael offered no explanation and quickly retreated to his room. Lying on his bed, he connected his consciousness to the land of origin. A moment later, a pair of eyes opened. "I'm back." An hour had passed since Michael left the land of origin, and the surroundings seemed a little brighter. It's probably approaching noon, he thought, standing up. Cautiously, he stepped out of the room. Only after scanning his surroundings and confirming there was no danger did he relax. The land of origin was the only place Michael felt safe enough to create an undead. Attempting such a thing at home felt unwise, and he remained wary of anything supernatural in the real world. Here, he could afford to take risks since there was no true death, unlike in reality. This was why he hadn't dared to enter dimensional cracks himself to hunt monsters and instead opted to buy their corpses. Michael felt his current strength wasn't enough for such risks. Finding a wide, clear space in the abandoned dorms, Michael took a deep breath and released a forest wolf corpse from his storage space. For the first time since his awakening, he was one step closer to creating an undead. I hope my luck isn't too bad. With his undead revival at intermediate mastery, Michael had only 9 chances, 3 attempts per corpse, to create an undead. He would be lying if he said he wasn't nervous. Chapter 31 Change in Talent. The effect of undead revival was straightforward. It revived a corpse as an undead. However, reviving a corpse could fail in 3 scenarios. First was the mastery of the skill. The success rate of undead revival depended heavily on its mastery level. Basic mastery was 20% success rate. Intermediate mastery was 50% success rate. Advanced mastery was 80% success rate. Perfect mastery rarely fails. At perfect mastery, effects of a skill were said to evolve, but Michael was far from that level. With his intermediate mastery, Michael's chances of success were only 50%. Second was the strength difference. Reviving a corpse also depended on the difference in strength between the necromancer and the corpse. The mastery level of undead revival wasn't everything. If the strength difference was too great, reviving a corpse was likely to fail. Forcing the process could even result in a backlash against the necromancer, as creating a contract with an undead required sacrificing a part of their soul. This sacrificed fragment served as the link between the necromancer and the undead if the revival succeeded. That fragment was represented as a contract slot on the Awakener panel. The contract slot was essentially a representation of the necromancer's soul strength. As a necromancer grew stronger, their soul also became more powerful, creating additional contract slots. A necromancer capable of gaining 5 extra slots per level had an exceptionally strong soul, which was a testament to their talent. However, it wasn't as though individuals from other classes lacked strong souls. They did, which allowed them to create undead as well. But this was where the uniqueness of classes came into play. Everyone could cook, but a non-chef could rarely match the skills of a master chef whose life revolved around cooking. Or, as people said on Earth, it came down to a skill issue. The third factor was mana, which was directly tied to the strength of the corpse being used to create an undead. Reviving a lion would require far more mana than reviving a rabbit, where the consumption might be barely noticeable. Without sufficient mana, even the highest skill level would result in failure. The stronger the corpse, the higher the mana consumption. This was one of the reasons necromancers were an intelligence-based class, alongside their role as a variant of mages. This was why Michael always referred to himself as a fake necromancer. Of course, the most important factor at the end of the day was the completeness of the corpse. You couldn't create an effective undead from just the torso or fragmented remains. Attempting to do so would result in a defective undead. Fortunately, the corpses Michael obtained from the association were all intact, bearing only the scars of the battles that had brought them down. Michael stared at the first forest wolf corpse in front of him. Its green body was massive, even for its level. At only level 2, it stood almost a meter tall if upright. Michael had brought 3 forest wolf corpses, all common rank 2 stars, with the highest being level 7. That one looked like it could stand as tall as him, Michael being quite tall at 5'9". Fortunately, it wasn't an ironclad rule that stronger monsters always had larger bodies. If unranked monsters were already his height, Michael couldn't imagine the size of higher-ranked ones. Of course, this didn't mean there were no colossal strong monsters. Michael remembered logging into the Supers Association forum for the first time and watching a demigod cultivator take down a 100-meter-tall beast. Michael cleared all distracting thoughts from his mind and took a deep breath to steady his nerves. Once ready, he fixed his gaze on the forest wolf corpse before him and spoke in a firm, steady voice. Undead revival. Just like whenever he used basic shot, Michael immediately felt an instinctive awareness after casting Undead Revival, and both his hands began to move in midair. Mana gathered at the tip of his fingers, forming a greenish-black light. This was Michael's mana signature. While mana itself was colorless, everyone had a unique signature that appeared when they used it. Michael's was the eerie greenish-black light emitting from his fingertips. Though surprised by the sight, as this was his first time casting a magic skill, which was, in fact, a spell, he focused on the awareness that accompanied Undead Revival and followed the movements it guided him to. His hands moved swiftly in midair, and a greenish magic circle, filled with strange symbols, formed in front of him. As the circle neared completion, Michael could feel his mana draining, but it remained manageable for now, as he hadn't reached the main part of the ritual yet. Suddenly, the magic circle shrunk and shot into the body of the forest wolf. A greenish-black gas started to emit from its corpse. Immediately, Michael felt his mana draining rapidly. The consumption only stopped after about 30% of his mana was used up. However, I failed. Reviving the forest wolf corpse as an undead had failed. Though disappointed, Michael wasn't too downhearted. He had expected this outcome, which was why he had started with the level 2 forest wolf corpse. While necromancers could level up their undead, if he had started with the level 7 forest wolf and failed 3 times, reviving the level 2 one would take more time to reach the same level. Of course, simply placing the level 7 corpse last wouldn't guarantee success. But now that he had cast the skill for the first time, Michael had gained experience. SEA the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He didn't check his skill panel, but he was sure his proficiency level had improved slightly. I still have mana, so let's continue. But Undead Revival really drains mana, and this is only for a level 2 corpse. Michael silently decided that after this, he'd raise his intelligence stat. He had 18 attribute points now, so it should be enough. After resting for a while, Michael continued. Undead Revival. A while later, Michael finally succeeded. Though he was panting slightly from mana exhaustion, Michael gazed at the standing forest wolf in front of him with an excited smile. Its eyes were completely white, and its once green fur was now a pale, sickly grayish green. Feeling the connection with the undead, Michael commanded it to perform basic actions. As he did so, he called up his panel in his mind. Status. Name, Michael Norman. Class, Necromancer Apprentice. Level 5. EXP, 114 out of 800. Strength, 2.5. Agility, 6.4. Constitution, 4.3. Intelligence, 8.5. Attribute points, 18. Skills, Undead Summoning, Undead Revival, Detect, Basic Shot. Talent, Infinite Evolution. Class Skill, Contract Slot 1/10. Gift, Mark of Origin. Sure enough, a contract slot was now taken. I finally have an undead, Michael exclaimed, a wide grin spreading across his face. Bye-bye, fake old me. Michael was gleeful. Fortunately, it only took him 2 tries to create an undead, and he hadn't wasted $4,000. But not even a few seconds later, Michael calmed down, his eyes drawn to another section in his panel. I wonder if there's a change now, Michael muttered as he turned his focus to view his talent. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Evolution points: 4. Evolvable. Undead Forest Wolf LV. 2. Sufficient evolution points. Can be evolved. Huh. It took a second for Michael to fully react. It really did need me to have an undead before it works. Michael roared in laughter, excited as he examined what his talent could do. Talents were said to be incredibly useful, and Michael was especially hopeful considering the dominating name of his own. Undead Forest Wolf Level 2? Isn't this my undead? Michael confirmed, turning to look at the forest wolf in front of him. Undead Forest Wolf LV2. Rank: Common. As expected, Michael muttered before returning his focus to the panel. Sufficient evolution points to evolve my undead? What does this mean? As soon as Michael thought about it, the content on the panel shifted. Undead Forest Wolf LV2. Rank: Common. Evolve to Common for 1 evolution point. Wait, hold up. Chapter 32: Evolution of the Forest Wolf. Rare rank: Undead. Michael could almost hear his own heartbeat pounding in excitement as he stared at the content on the panel before him. He didn't dare believe it at first. My talent can enhance the potential of my undead. It sounded almost impossible. Perhaps there were methods to do this elsewhere, but Michael had never heard of them, and frankly, he couldn't care at the moment. Trembling with excitement, Michael decided to test his talent immediately. Evolve, he practically shouted, his voice echoing in the empty space. As soon as the command was given, Michael saw his accumulated points reduced to 3. Immediately, the undead forest wolf's body began to emit a gray light, and it howled, a sound that sent a shiver down Michael's spine. Despite being undead, its body still retained certain traits from when it was alive. An undead, after all, is a creature reanimated through supernatural or magical means. While it lacks biological functions, it is sustained by necromantic energy or other unnatural forces. Undead beings are alive, but only in the sense of being animated by supernatural power, not true life. The wolf's howl seemed filled with pain as its body started to change, slowly expanding in size. An undead feeling pain wasn't something that made sense, but so was the sense in front of Michael. Michael watched the transformation intently, his eyes glued to every detail. Moments later, the gray light faded, and the wolf's form became fully visible. Its appearance hadn't changed much, aside from growing slightly larger, now almost as tall as Michael, comparable to the level 7 corpse he had purchased. But Michael's focus wasn't on its size. Undead Forest Wolf LV3. Rank: Common. The wolf's potential had increased to 3 stars, and it had even leveled up. Ha! Michael roared with laughter, until he abruptly choked, his excitement momentarily overwhelming him. But this didn't dampen his mood at all. His talent was incredibly powerful. Though it was called Infinite Evolution, Michael hadn't dared to imagine it would be anything like this. Still, there was one more thing he needed to confirm, to truly test the extent of his ability. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Evolution points: 3. Evolvable. Undead Forest Wolf LV. 3. Insufficient evolution points. Can't be evolved. It can still be evolved? Michael's hands shook with excitement. Though the panel didn't state it outright, it hinted that he could enhance the potential of his undead again, provided he had sufficient points. Without hesitation, Michael retrieved a spirit crystal from his mark of origin and began absorbing its energy. A short while later, his evolution points increased. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Evolution points: 6. Evolvable. Undead Forest Wolf LV. 3. Sufficient evolution points. Can be evolved. The spirit crystal had given him 3 evolution points, but that wasn't Michael's focus. Just as he had suspected, the only thing he lacked to evolve his undead further was more evolution points. However, the forest wolf is currently a 3-star common rank monster. Above this, Michael's voice trembled. It will become a rare rank monster. His body shook at the thought. Can my talent really be so heaven-defying? If his suspicions were correct, Michael's path to power would be far smoother than that of any ordinary necromancer. The necromancer class thrived on numbers, but stronger monsters were incredibly powerful and difficult to kill. This often forced even high-level necromancers to rely on a few elite undead, with the rest of their armies made up of weaker, cannon-fodder creatures. But with infinite evolution, Michael envisioned a terrifying future. While others would risk their lives or pay exorbitant prices to strengthen their undead armies, Michael's talent seemed to erase those limitations entirely. High-rank monsters weren't just defined by their strength, they were also defined by their rarity. Most necromancers, even at level 100, wouldn't command many undead with high rank, as there weren't a lot as one would imagine in the first place. But what about Michael? If his talent truly lived up to its name, infinite evolution, and allowed him to endlessly evolve as undead, wasn't it possible for all of his creatures to one day reach the demigod rank? There were 7 known ranks for monsters, from low to high: common, rare, extraordinary, epic, legendary, mythical, and demigod. Each rank had 3 mini-grades called stars, like 1-star common, 2-star common, 2-star rare, and so on. The mere thought made Michael feel like he was dreaming, his hopes soaring dangerously high. But there was only one way to confirm it, and that was to continue evolving. Come on, infinite evolution. Show me your limit. Undead Forest Wolf LV3. Rank, common. Evolve to rare for 5 evolution point. Yes. The undead forest wolf's body shone with a brilliant gray light, so intense that Michael had to squint. Despite the brightness, his determination to witness the changes kept his gaze fixed on the evolving creature. Like before, the undead wolf howled in pain, its cries echoing through the quiet surroundings. Its body grew larger and larger, eventually towering half a meter above Michael. But this time, the changes went far beyond mere size. SEO Arch the Nelfrio. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Beneath the glowing gray light, Michael noticed moss and vines sprouting across the wolf's grayish-green skin. Thick vines burst from the ground beneath its feet, writhing as if they had a life of their own. The undead wolf was transforming into something entirely new. Its aura grew so powerful that Michael struggled to breathe, the oppressive energy pressing down on him. Minutes later, the blinding gray light faded, and the transformation stopped. Before Michael could fully process the visual changes in his undead, several notification panels popped up before him. Your common undead forest wolf has evolved to rare undead verdant wolf. Your undead verdant wolf has advanced to rank 1, level 1, level 11. Your undead verdant wolf has gained the skill Plant Control. You have received feedback from your undead verdant wolf's rank advancement. Your strength stat has increased significantly. Your agility stat has increased significantly. Your constitution stat has increased significantly. Your intelligence stat has increased significantly. Immediately, Michael felt a powerful surge of energy coursing through his body. Chapter 33: Another Change. For classes like Beast Tamers and Necromancers, the advantage wasn't just the contract slots allowing them to command minions as part of their strength. Another noticeable benefit of these classes was the feedback they received as their minions grew stronger. For Beast Tamers, although they had fewer contract slots than Necromancers, gaining only additional slots every 5 levels, their main advantage lay in the feedback. As their tamed beasts grew stronger, the Tamers themselves received boosts, not just from rank advancements, but also from level ups. Necromancers, on the other hand, didn't receive feedback for each level up of their undead, but only from rank advancements. However, they compensated with a significantly larger number of contract slots. This meant that, while the feedback per level up didn't exist, the overall feedback from numerous rank advancements often surpassed that of Beast Tamers. Of course, there was a balance. The stronger the Tamer or Necromancer, the weaker the feedback they received from their minions. Conversely, weaker Tamers or Necromancers gained more noticeable feedback from their growing minions. Though Michael had learned this through various forum posts, which, in all honesty, were completely random, he was still stunned by the surge of power he felt from evolving his undead. No, what shocked him even more was that evolving his undead also caused it to rank up. He knew it was rare to find rare rank monsters below rank 1, as adult forms were typically rank 2 and far stronger than rank 1 creatures. Yet, the fact that this applied to his undead took him completely by surprise. After all, his talent was anything but conventional. The race has changed too, Michael observed. After some consideration, he didn't find this surprising. Rank and stars weren't just about determining the limit of a creature. They were, in a sense, tied to its very identity. Most forest wolves could only ever reach level 7 at best, with a rare few surpassing that and stepping into rank 1. Even this was considered the extreme limit of their race. Anything beyond that would already exceed the natural capacity of their species. Perhaps this is the true meaning of evolution, to break free from the limits imposed on the self. Michael mused, reflecting on his talent. From what he'd seen so far, his talent wasn't merely about raising the level cap of his undead. It seemed far more profound than that. Michael briefly entertained the possibility that his talent could affect more than just his undead. But with his limited knowledge, this thought remained just that, a fleeting idea Michael couldn't fully explore yet. The next major change Michael noticed was in his own body. Feeling the newfound strength coursing through him, his eyes lit up with pure delight. Status: Name: Michael Norman. Class: Necromancer Apprentice. Level 5. EXP: 114 out of 800. Strength: 4.5. Agility: 9.4. Constitution: 6.3. Intelligence: 10.5. Attribute points: 18. Skills: Undead Summoning, Undead Revival, Detect, Basic Shot. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Class skill: Contract slot 1/10. Gift: Mark of Origin. All his stats, aside from agility, increased by 2 points, while agility increased by 3. A total gain of 9 stat points. This incredible boost was entirely due to the feedback from his undead's rank advancement. Still, isn't this increase a bit too much? Michael reasoned that his weakness likely amplified the feedback, but the effect being comparable to a level up felt excessive. Is it because it's a rare rank species? Michael suspected this was the primary cause. Rare rank creatures were known to rival awakeners in strength, even with attribute points accounted for. In contrast, common rank monsters couldn't measure up, so it made sense that a stronger creature would naturally yield a stronger feedback. Also, perhaps due to the wolf's nature, agility received the highest boost. Once again, agility was catching up to Michael's intelligence stat for the top spot. As for the newly gained skill, plant control, it seemed less shocking compared to the race change and rank advancement, making it easier for Michael to process. Verdant Wolf LV 11. Name: None. EXP: 0/2500. Rank: Rare. Skills: Bite, Plant Control New. Master: Michael Norman. This was the information panel of his undead, something Michael, as its master, normally had access to. Though the newly gained skill didn't shock him as much as the other surprises, Michael's curiosity was piqued. SEA the Nellfire.NUT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Plant Control, Basic Mastery, Proficiency, 0.2%. A racial ability of the verdant wolf species, Plant Control allows them to manipulate plants within their surroundings and use mana to influence growth or movement. At its current mastery, the skill had a range of 10 meters. A racial skill, Michael muttered. This wasn't something he had anticipated. Initially, he thought the skill was a result of evolution, but realizing it was tied to the species itself opened new possibilities. If I evolve the other 2 forest wolf corpses in my storage, they'll likely gain the same skill. But before creating more undead, Michael had a pressing question. Can the verdant wolf still be evolved? Without hesitation, he focused on his talent panel to find out. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Evolution points: 1. Evolvable. Undead Verdant Wolf LV 11. Insufficient evolution points. Can't be evolved. It can still be evolved? Another surge of excitement rushed through Michael. However, a moment later, his mood soured slightly. My evolution points are still too few. At the moment, Michael only knew of 2 ways to gain evolution points. Daily refresh and by absorbing spirit crystals. The latter was far too expensive, while the former was too slow. Unranked spirit crystals also seemed to offer very little in terms of evolution points. As Michael dwelled on his lack of points, his gaze subconsciously shifted to his panel, and he was immediately taken aback by a change he hadn't noticed before. Somehow, at some point, his talent that was supposed to grant only 1 evolution point per day had changed to 2. What happened? Michael frowned. Had this been before he discovered his talent's ability, he might not have thought much of it, but things were different now. His talent was likely going to become the cornerstone of his strength in both the land of origin and Aurora, so anything related to it had to be taken seriously. After thinking for a moment, a suspicion he couldn't shake came to mind. Is it because of my undead? Chapter 34 New Skill. The Supers Association forum didn't provide much information on talents, leaving Michael with few speculations. CTHRONOVROLFIR.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. However, there was something he could do to confirm his earlier suspicion. Create more undead. Sending out the rank 1 verdant wolf, which he named Lucky, partially due to it being his first undead and the reason for discovering the ability of his talent. He instructed it to guard the room while he made space. Michael then brought another forest wolf corpse from his mark of origin, ready to test his theory. Thanks to the feedback from Lucky's advancement, Michael's exhausted mana was partially replenished. As one's stats improved, the changes became qualitative rather than additive, like 1 + 1 equaling 3 instead of 2. Though the 2-point increase in intelligence didn't fully restore his mana, it at least kept him from panting like before. With his experience from reviving Lucky, Michael rested briefly to reach an optimal state before attempting undead revival on the second forest wolf corpse. The first attempt failed. The second attempt also failed. After 2 consecutive failures, Michael didn't immediately try again. Each corpse allowed only 3 revival attempts, and failure on the third would result in losing $4,000 and an undead that could potentially give him evolution points. Previously, losing $4,000 would have made his heart ache, but now, evolution points were far more valuable, worth more than $40,000 in his eyes. Resting wouldn't guarantee success in the next attempt, but it was wise to recover since his mana had dropped significantly. As he rested, Michael opened his status screen, gazing at his stats with a thoughtful expression. Strength, 4.5. Agility, 9.4. Constitution, 6.3. Intelligence, 10.5. Attribute points, 18. Unlike before, when the intelligence stat was nearly useless to Michael, the situation had shifted. As he grew stronger, the corpses required to create undead would also increase in strength, demanding more mana. This meant Michael had to accept the reality of the typical necromancer's glass cannon physique. Yet, he didn't feel disappointed. Was brute strength better than commanding several demigod-level undead minions? Absolutely not. One was a brute, and the other was a boss. That said, Michael wouldn't be physically weak. Being a rare class necromancer, he would grow stronger through feedback from his undead as they advanced between ranks. While he couldn't match pure physical classes, he could certainly dominate pure mages. With these thoughts in mind, Michael glanced at his accumulated attribute points. Now at level 5, he hadn't used any attribute points since leveling to 2 to handle the slimes in this place. Earning 6 attribute points per level, 4 from his class and 2 from his race, he had saved a total of 18 points. It was a considerable number, capable of providing an instant boost to his stats. Thanks to his talent, Michael was now willing to commit to the pure necromancer path. If I'm going to be a proper mage, I might as well go all out. Necromancers were variant mages, making intelligence their primary stat. Michael remembered that for every 20 points in a key stat, there was a chance to gain a skill related to that stat and class. His intelligence stat was currently at 10.5. With the 10 attribute points, he could push it to 20 points. Though there was no guarantee he'd gain a skill upon reaching 20 intelligence, it wouldn't be a loss. More mana was invaluable for any mage, and intelligence also increased learning speed, making it easier to master spells. While intelligence didn't make someone smarter or wiser, it provided a significant edge in areas like spellcraft, which would prove invaluable once he joined an academy. Although Awakeners academies had strict requirements which he wasn't sure of entering, Michael was confident he could at least enter a cultivation academy from what he had read in the forum. While the latter wasn't ideal for someone like him, it was a backup option. The more he thought about it, the more he felt compelled to invest in intelligence. After a moment's consideration, Michael finally decided to let loose on this stat for the first time. Intelligence. Show me your limit. Strength, 4.5. Agility, 9.4. Constitution, 6.3. Intelligence, 20.5. Attribute points, 8. Immediately after allocating the attribute points to intelligence, Michael felt his mind clear as if a fog had been lifted. His senses became sharper, though this wasn't like the perceptual boost from agility points. This time, he started to pick up on something entirely different. Mana. It was all around him, invisible yet palpable. Having encountered it briefly before, it didn't take long for Michael to recognize the sensation. But just as he was about to immerse himself in this newfound awareness, a notification appeared before him. Your mana is overflowing. You have gained the skill, Share Senses. Share Senses, Basic Mastery, Proficiency, 0%. Share Senses with your undead. Current mastery allows linking with 2 undead at a time. Current range is 100 meters. The skill can be used in different ways based on personal understanding. I lucked out, Michael exclaimed, his excitement clear. Although he had told himself he wouldn't be upset if he didn't awaken a skill, he had secretly hoped he would. Now, not only had his wish come true, but the skill was incredibly useful. Currently, his connection to his undead relied on the soul link via the contract slot, which allowed commands and telepathy within a limited range. Without Share Senses, his options expanded significantly. For starters, Michael could now have his undead scout dangerous areas while he monitored from a safe distance, a crucial advantage for someone as cautious as him. Beyond scouting, the skill also opened up new ways to better utilize his undead, which pleased Michael immensely. But he couldn't dwell on it for too long. With his mana now fully replenished, and even greater than before, Michael decided it was time to attempt another revival. Chapter 35 More Evolution Points. Thanks to his previous experiences in using Undead Revival, Michael finally understood the importance of agility for a necromancer. He had always wondered why agility received the second highest increase whenever he leveled up. At first glance, it seemed counterintuitive for a class focused on magic and intelligence. However, his casting experience shed light on the matter. Higher agility meant better flexibility and faster movement speed, both of which played a crucial role in spellcasting. For a necromancer, agility wasn't about physical speed but casting speed. If one's movements during spellcasting were too slow, it could lead to critical issues, such as spell failure or vulnerability to enemy attacks. Of course, Michael also liked as agility was also a prioritized stat for necromancers. At least he could run away fast at the first glance of danger. Though Michael's improved agility didn't significantly increase the success rate of Undead Revival, it did enhance his casting process, which may or may not have contributed to Michael's success in creating his second undead. Despite his curiosity about whether having undead affected the rate at which he gained evolution points, Michael didn't pause to investigate. With only one corpse remaining, he decided to try creating another undead in one go. This time, luck was on his side, and he succeeded in reviving the third undead on his first attempt. Undead Forest Wolf LV 7. Rank Common. Undead Forest Wolf LV 5. Rank Common. Out of the 3 corpses he had brought from the association, Michael was fortunate enough to create an undead from each one. Happy with the growing number of his undead, Michael eagerly turned to his talent to check the rate at which he earned evolution points daily. To his delight, he saw it had increased to 4. So having undead really does give me more points. The discovery filled him with excitement, but also sparked a train of thought. While it was good news that his evolution points were increasing, it was a bit frustrating not knowing why. Michael speculated that this phenomenon might have something to do with the contract, or rather, the soul link, between him and his undead. Talents didn't rely on mana. They typically used soul energy. Yet, unlike other talents that actively drew soul energy when used, Michael felt nothing, even when evolving Lucky. This led him to a theory. Perhaps his talent wasn't an active type, but a passive one. Instead of actively consuming soul energy, it passively absorbed it, accumulating until it reached a threshold and formed an evolution point. If his theory was correct, then it made sense why having more undead increased his evolution points. Maybe his talent treated the soul link between him and his undead as an extension of his own soul and drew energy from them as well. After all, the undead created by Undead Revival had their own souls, which sustained their existence. While undead creatures weren't truly alive, this magically artificial soul acted as their life and energy reserve. Michael wasn't currently concerned about the energy reserves of his undead. His focus was on the connection between their souls and the increase in his evolution points. If that's the case, Michael concluded, then the plan is simple. I need to level up to unlock more contract slots and fill them with undead. That should increase my evolution points even further. Unlike other necromancers who had to carefully consider how they filled their contract slots, since canceling a contract caused backlash, Michael didn't share this concern. While others worried about the potential of their undead, it wasn't an issue for him. If a creature's potential was too low, he could simply evolve it. Michael's cautious nature made him even prefer weaker creatures if they came from the real world for safety reasons. After all, in the real world, one only had a single life. Some might see his caution as cowardice, but that wasn't entirely true. If he were a true coward, he wouldn't have had the guts to confront the acid slime after being mutilated by its attack and enduring excruciating pain. Most people would have given up in his situation or lacked the willpower to survive such an ordeal. While it was true that being in the land of origin gave him more guts, it didn't diminish the fact that many other awakeners wouldn't have lasted in his shoes. After reflecting on his talent, Michael concluded that whether or not more undead truly increased the rate of evolution points, it was undeniably good news for him. CTHO Novel fired an E.T. website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If his speculation was correct, filling his remaining 7 contract slots would allow him to gain 11 evolution points every 24 hours, enough to evolve 2 3-star common undead into rare rank each day. Reaching the demigod rank for all his undead was a distant goal, but achieving rare rank for them seemed well within reach. Rare rank undead would also begin at rank 1, ensuring they wouldn't be too weak, even initially. The more Michael thought about it, the more he craved additional undeads. Though cautious by nature, even the most risk-averse person would be tempted by the promise of greater power, and Michael was no exception. What was a little risk compared to the potential for more strength? However, despite his growing eagerness to explore the dimensional cracks he had previously avoided, Michael knew there were still a few matters to address in the land of origin first. 1. Starting with evolving another undead. Currently back to square one with only a single evolution point, Michael decided to absorb the 2 spirit crystals he had left. The first gave him 2 points, and the second added 3 more. Combined with the 1 evolution point he already had, he now had 6. Just enough to evolve another undead to rare rank. Talent: Infinite Evolution. Evolution points: 6. Evolvable: Undead Verdant Wolf LV, 11. Insufficient evolution points. Can't be evolved. Undead Forest Wolf LV, 7. Sufficient evolution points. Can be evolved. Undead Forest Wolf LV, 5. Sufficient evolution points. Can be evolved. Chapter 36, Second Rare Rank Undead. As expected, Lucky couldn't be evolved again. Michael wondered how many evolution points would be required for Lucky's next evolution. At the common rank, evolving had only cost 1 point, but advancing to the next rank required 5 times the previous amount. Michael still knew little about his talent and its evolution point distribution. To uncover the full pattern, he needed more undead under his command. Evolving Lucky is off the table, but these 2 are still viable. The question is, do I raise both to their peak potential in the common rank or concentrate all my evolution points on one and evolve it to rare rank? This was Michael's current dilemma. If he focused all his points on one undead, it would require all 6 evolution points to achieve rare rank. Alternatively, evolving both to 3-star common rank would only cost 2 points per undead. However, after a moment of reflection, Michael felt foolish. Why am I even debating this? A rank 1 rare rank undead is leagues above a 3-star common rank undead. It's not even a comparison. To Michael, what he needed most now were strong undead to ensure his plans for both the land of origin and the real world proceeded smoothly, and, most importantly, safely. Michael had already resolved to fill his contract slots using the real world due to his situation in the land of origin and level up before his talent showed its ability. But now that it did, he was filled with even more enthusiasm. A rank 1 rare rank monster, equivalent in strength to what most awakeners could only match with heavy use of attribute points, was immensely powerful. With 2 such undead, Michael would gain an unprecedented advantage. Dimensional cracks in the real world were categorized based on the cultivation power system. With his current attribute points, Michael could already boost himself to the strength of an all-rounder peak rank 1 knight. If he hadn't invested in intelligence earlier, he might not match a peak rank 2 cultivator, but he would still be stronger than a new rank 2 knight. If Michael was this capable, what about a rank 1 rare rank undead? Surely, it could fight against peak rank 2 cultivators without much difficulty. The highest-rated dimensional crack in Woodstone City only reached level 2. With 2 rank 1 rare rank undead, Michael could dominate such a crack with ease. That said, he wasn't planning to rush into a level 2 crack immediately. Michael's strategy was simple. Develop steadily. He would start with weak monsters, turn them into undead, and use the evolution points gained from them to strengthen his forces. With this cycle, Michael envisioned himself creating an army of rank 1 rare rank undead monsters, ensuring his future growth was both stable and unstoppable. Even though Michael was naturally cautious, the power he wielded now was enough to embolden him. Of course, this newfound confidence hinged on whether he had the strength to back it up. Michael didn't feel that just 1 rank 1 undead could sustain his boldness. 2 were barely enough. For now, one of the undead would have to wait until later to evolve. It wouldn't be long, though. Michael planned to visit a dimensional crack soon, though he hadn't decided which one yet. With more undead at his command, the forest wolf would be able to evolve, and this applied to all the undead that would follow. After making a decision, Michael stared at the level 7 undead forest wolf in front of him. It was the last undead he had revived, so it was currently the only one in the room with him. The other undead was outside guarding with Lucky. Since evolving wasn't like casting a skill, Michael immediately got to work. First, he spent an evolution point to evolve the undead forest wolf to a 3-star common rank undead. After waiting a few seconds after the change, he immediately spent the last 5 points to evolve the 3-star common rank forest wolf to a rank 1 rare rank undead. Like Lucky, its body changed. It grew moss and vines on its grayish-green body. Its aura strengthened as it advanced to rank 1 as a 1-star rare rank level 1 verdant wolf, making Michael very happy. However, it was half a head shorter than Lucky, which made Michael aware that even within the same rank, there were differences. A few seconds later, the feedback Michael had been waiting for arrived. The feedback from his undead ranking up. Your common undead forest wolf has evolved to rare undead verdant wolf. Your undead verdant wolf has advanced to rank 1, level 11. Your undead verdant wolf has gained the skill, Plant Control. You have received feedback from your undead verdant wolf's rank advancement. Your strength stat has increased significantly. Your agility stat has increased significantly. Your constitution stat has increased significantly. Your intelligence stat has increased significantly. Ignoring the familiar notification after a brief glance, Michael turned to inspect his increase in power through his stat panel. Status: Strength, 6.1, 1.6 carat. SEO are the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Agility, 11.1, 1.7 carat. Constitution, 7.7, 1.4 carat. Intelligence, 22.3, 1.8 carat. Attribute points, 8. Michael's stats received another significant boost from his undead's advancement. However, it was slightly less than what Lucky had granted him. Michael wondered if it was due to his own body being stronger now, or if this undead's personal talent was weaker than Lucky's. It could be both. What surprised Michael the most was that his intelligence still saw a significant increase. Intelligence was now his highest stat, so he wouldn't have been surprised if it hadn't increased. But it actually went up by nearly 2 points, just like Lucky's. It seemed that all verdant wolves had a natural talent for magic. Rare-grade monsters were truly something. Michael dismissed the panel and turned to gaze at his transformed undead, now radiating an intimidating aura. Since you're my second evolved undead, I'll give you a name too, he said. Let's call you Prince. Though you're second in my team, you're royalty now, an infinitely evolvable being. Chapter 37 Mistake. Michael cringed a little at his words, but found no fault in them. With his talent, all his undead were indeed special. Calling them privileged was no exaggeration. He also didn't see anything wrong with naming his undead. The stronger an undead became, the more developed its consciousness would be, though the extent depended on its innate talent or the necromancer's efforts. Thanks to his talent, Michael was certain his undead would eventually surpass normal limits, awakening full consciousness sooner or later. In fact, it might not take long at all since his undead weren't going to be ordinary. Prince, still a newly created undead, hadn't shown signs yet, but Lucky was already exhibiting early traces of awareness. Michael had caught the verdant wolf chewing moss off a wall, only to spit it out and tilt its head in clear confusion. It likely couldn't taste anything. As for why a wolf would eat something plant-related, perhaps it was a lingering habit from its previous consciousness. Lucky, like all undead creatures, would retain faint traces of its former self despite the transformation. While its memories and personality were erased, certain instincts and habits could persist. Or maybe Lucky might be innately stupid. Michael hoped not. Then again, perhaps it had something to do with the nature of verdant wolves themselves. Perhaps verdant wolves were omnivores. Either way, the behavior confirmed that Lucky's consciousness had begun to awaken, and it was stronger than Michael had expected. If this was due to its rank, then all his undead would gain awareness eventually, making naming them more meaningful. However, Michael knew naming every undead wasn't practical. By level 10, he'd have at least 20 undead, and by level 100, potentially 200 or more. He wasn't good with names, and would likely resort to numbering if he tried naming them all. So Michael decided. Only the first 2 undead from each race would receive names. Any others would be exceptions, named only if they were special in some way. Of course, his undead still needed to be identified in some way, but that was a problem for another time. For now, once I'm done here, I should figure out how to access the dimensional cracks in Woodstone City. That shouldn't be an issue, Michael muttered to himself. Despite his eagerness to leave the land of origin, there was still one thing left to do. Using his second-class skill, Undead Summoning. Unless Michael wanted to carry his undead everywhere in the cramped space of his mark of origin, Undead Summoning was essential. The skill functioned similarly to Undead Revival, with its success rate tied to mastery level except it had no attempt limits. However, it consumed far more mana. The cost reduced only after the skill succeeded. At its current intermediate mastery, Michael had a 50% success rate. But what exactly did success mean? Undead Summoning allowed Michael to summon contracted undead anywhere and dismiss them at will. This required forming a contract between the undead and a subspace known as the Netherworld, the home of the dead. By channeling his mana, Michael attempted to take his undead to the Netherworld, enabling them to inhabit it when not summoned. The Netherworld was an excellent environment for undead, but it came with an annoying drawback: its resistance. Every failed attempt to send an undead to the Netherworld increased the retry cost by 50%. This compounding penalty reflected the Netherworld's growing rejection of non-native creatures. The situation was even worse for stronger undead, as they required more mana to be contracted initially, and exponentially more if retries were necessary. This was why the Necromancer class relied heavily on intelligence. Mana was truly their lifeline. Currently, Michael still has an abundant mana pool, bolstered by his recent stat increases. Without delay, he activated Undead Summoning and began the process. Prince stood before him, ready to be the first test subject for Undead Summoning. The casting process felt similar to Undead Revival, but with a crucial difference. 2 additional magic circles formed during the spell. Instead of shrinking and merging into the undead's body as with Revival, these circles expanded outward, pulling more mana from Michael as they enveloped Prince. They emitted a greenish-black light as they slid beneath him, causing Prince's body to glow faintly. Michael's mana rapidly drained. Unfortunately, despite consuming 15% of his total mana, the spell failed. A frown appeared on Michael's face. The mana consumption is a bit too much. The implications dawned on him quickly. At rank 1, Prince's strength likely demanded significantly more mana to form the contract with the Netherworld. If 15% of his mana failed on the first attempt, the second attempt would cost roughly 22%, and subsequent retries would only worsen the situation. This is too much. Michael's expression further darkened. In his rush to evolve his undead, he had overlooked a crucial detail. The stronger an undead was, the higher the initial mana cost to contract it with the Netherworld. SEA the NOVROLFIR.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He didn't know this initially, but he should have thought of it after evolving Lucky. By evolving Prince to rare grade before attempting the summoning ritual, Michael had unintentionally made the process much harder for himself. If he'd prioritized sending his undead into the Netherworld while they were still common grade, it would have been far more efficient. Now, his undead strength, an extension of his strength, had temporarily become a frustrating obstacle. I'll have to be more careful about how I evolve my undead in the future, Michael muttered. This realization brought another insight. Perhaps the reason powerful necromancers didn't always fill their contract slots wasn't just because they sought undead with better potential. It might also be because they couldn't find weak ones with enough potential. Sure, a necromancer could forego undead summoning and keep powerful undead roaming in the real world, but Michael doubted that was practical in most situations. The Netherworld provided a far more efficient solution for housing his undead. I really didn't think this through, he admitted, frustrated. Fortunately, his current undead weren't too large to fit in his Mark of Origin storage space. While the storage couldn't accommodate living beings, undead were technically not alive, making it a temporary workaround. However, this wasn't a permanent solution. For now, Michael decided to leave that problem for his future self to handle. To be safe, Michael dismissed Prince outside the room and called Lucky back in. Between the two, Lucky seemed the stronger choice to gamble on 4 undead summoning success. Michael resolved to bet everything on Lucky. Determined, he used all his accumulated attribute points on intelligence, pushing the stat to 30. Lucky, you better hope your name brings you actual luck, Michael muttered nervously. With no time to waste, he began casting undead summoning on Lucky. For now, he could still use his storage space to transport his undead to the real world. But what would happen if they grew bigger as they became stronger? Or as their numbers grew? The way things were looking now, it seems his overall power was going to be divided in both worlds, making him significantly weaker as he grew stronger. It seems that, for now, I need monsters weaker than level 5 if I want to avoid shooting myself in the foot with the disgusting Netherworld system and that scam of a undead summoning skill, Michael grumbled. Unfortunately, weaker monsters didn't guarantee success either. Once again, the worries of the future piled higher. Of course, this didn't mean Michael wouldn't try to fill his contract slots and evolve his undead. The process could be delayed but never compromised. At worst, he would keep most of his undead situated in the land of origin, focusing more on those he could summon and dismiss at will. These select undead would become his main ones, and he would prioritize their growth and evolution. Also, he didn't believe other necromancers hasn't thought about the disgusting nature of the Netherworld and undead summoning to not think of something. Chapter 38 Truly Lucky. Michael stared at Lucky in front of him, a faint smile playing on his lips, tinged with a hint of resentment. He steadied his heavy breathing before speaking. Lucky, we might have to change your name soon. You're a scam, buddy. With 30 points in intelligence, 30 times the amount of an average human, Michael had expected far better results. Yet, it had taken all his mana to barely send Lucky to the Netherworld. The Lucky before him now was the one he had just summoned back after some rest. Michael had to admit, the effects of undead summoning were impressive. Once the contract was set, he could summon any number of undead instantly, as long as his mana could sustain it. However, the cost of activating the skill weighed heavily on him. 30 points in intelligence weren't a simple linear boost. The qualitative change was immense, yet it had taken more than 2 attempts to send Lucky to the Netherworld, depleting his mana reserves. It sounded little, but it wasn't. Lucky was indeed stronger than Prince. The first attempt to send him to the Netherworld consumed 20% of Michael's total mana reserve, assuming it had been full. The next attempt drained 30%, and the one after that took a staggering 45%. This was on top of the 15% consumed by his initial attempt with Prince. If Michael hadn't rested for nearly an hour, a forced sleep brought on by sheer exhaustion, he wouldn't have had enough mana to make the final attempt. Michael had really gone all out. Through some quick calculations, Michael realized that, under ideal conditions, his current mana could allow him to revive close to 20 undead successfully, if he succeeded on the first attempt every time. However, the repeated casting of undead summoning was far more exhausting than undead revival, due to its steep mana consumption. Even so, the benefits of the skill couldn't be ignored. With his current storage space, Michael could barely fit 4 undead the size of Lucky, while the rest would have to remain in the land of origin. This limitation significantly weakened his combat strength in the real world. If only undead summoning weren't such a scam. With his undead connected to the netherworld, Michael could theoretically summon all of them simultaneously in both the land of origin and Aurora, if his mana reserves allowed it. Though dissatisfied, Michael was still happy he had succeeded in the end. As long as his undead could enter and leave the netherworld at will, the situation wouldn't change, even if he continued to evolve them. This was because the contract with the netherworld was tied to the souls of the undead, not their race or physical bodies. Perhaps evolution also strengthened their souls, but the foundation remained the same, and that was what truly mattered. If Michael could summon and dismiss at least 10 monsters from the netherworld, even if his forces were divided, it wouldn't be a bad situation. Those 10 undead, capable of traversing the netherworld, would become the focus of his efforts to evolve them. Even with just 10, a force of 10 rare rank undead would be formidable, wouldn't it? And if rare rank wasn't enough, then what about 10 extraordinary rank undead? If even that failed, what about 10 epic rank undead? Moreover, it wasn't as if he wouldn't try undead summoning on his other undead. If he managed to expand his roster beyond 10, so much the better. Even if he couldn't, he'd still have divided undead from his forces in Aurora. He could also evolve to serve as his backup. I'll need to check the forums later to see if there's anything useful for this, Michael muttered. He paused, deep in thought. It looks like I'll need to revise the naming system as well. Only special undead should be given names to distinguish them, with priority for those that have access to the netherworld. Several plans began to form in his mind as he dismissed Lucky back to the netherworld. He placed Prince in his storage space while leaving the last undead, his still unevolved undead, to guard him. After consuming another energy supplement, Michael disconnected his consciousness from the land of origin. I'm back. Michael sank into the soft embrace of his bed, the lingering headache from mana exhaustion easing slightly, as if melting away. Let me rest for a bit, Michael murmured, closing his eyes. But he didn't fully realize just how drained he was. While his body had grown much stronger than before, mental exhaustion couldn't be soothed as easily, even with an increase in his stats. Ever since he first entered the land of origin at noon, he had been on the move, from one task to another. Even after returning to Aurora, he barely had time to catch his breath before heading to the Association to buy corpses and returning to the land of origin to revive undead. In between, he had undertaken taxing tasks, so it wasn't surprising that exhaustion had caught up with him. Michael was so worn out that barely a minute after closing his eyes, he slipped into sleep. Soon, soft snores filled the room. Today marked the second day since Michael had become an awakener. While it hadn't been what he'd imagined, obstacles seeming to rise wherever he looked, deep down, Michael felt a sense of happiness. Whether it was his past life on Earth or the original owner of this body, this was the first time in both lives that Michael felt truly alive. And it was all thanks to his awakening. He was truly lucky. Chapter 39: Preparation to Enter a Dimensional Crack. 1. A loud, thunderous growl from Michael's stomach woke him up. Ugh, he groaned, placing a hand over his stomach as he sat up slowly, using his other hand for support. What time is it? Why is it so bright? Michael muttered in confusion, only for realization to hit him. I overslept? He glanced around the room, noticing the curtains were drawn back to let in sunlight. The lights which he always left on were now off. Someone had also covered him with a blanket. It could only have been Aunt Mia or Lily. After surveying the room and recalling yesterday's events, Michael reluctantly accepted he had fallen asleep. It made sense after everything he had been through. Thankfully, though he had slept stressed, Michael woke up fully refreshed. Evidently, his strong body played a role in helping him recover so quickly. After stretching on the bed, Michael got up and grabbed his phone from his desk to check the time. Noticing it was plugged in, he figured someone had been in the room while he slept. 9:32 a.m. Michael was surprised. Though the sunlight suggested it was late, Michael hadn't expected it to be this late. Michael retraced his steps from the previous day. After returning from the land of origin, he went to the association to buy monster corpses. By the time he arrived home, it had been past 5 or 6 p.m. He remembered meeting Lily, with the evening sky already darkening. In the land of origin, which was 3 to 4 hours behind Aurora's time zone, it had been evening when he arrived back. From reviving his undead to attempting to send them to the netherworld, Michael estimated another 2 hours had passed. I probably returned from Aurora by 9 p.m., so I slept 12 hours. That was a long time, but it hadn't caused any problems. Even better, Michael concluded. Since I was planning to visit the dimensional cracks, I can go early and still get back at a decent time. Plans were already forming in Michael's head. But Michael's thoughts were interrupted by the thunderous growl of his stomach, reminding him he hadn't eaten. Now that I think about it, I didn't eat anything yesterday, did I? Michael was stunned. Had he been so preoccupied with becoming an awakener that he forgot something as basic as eating? Perhaps it was because his stronger body could endure hunger for longer, or maybe it was the nutrients he consumed in the land of origin with his other body that made him subconsciously believe he had eaten. It wasn't impossible. After all, whenever he switched between the land of origin and Aurora, it was only his body that changed, not his consciousness. This is serious. If I'm not careful, I might develop an identity crisis. Before Michael could sink further into his thoughts, a knock at his door interrupted him. "Brother Michael," a soft voice called out. It wasn't loud, but with his enhanced senses, Michael heard it loud and clear. It was his cousin Lily. In fact, he realized he had already been hearing faint noises outside his door, but subconsciously ignored them since they weren't chaotic or attention-grabbing enough to warrant his focus. "Come in," Michael replied calmly. The door opened, and Lily stepped inside. "You're awake," she said with a smile before greeting him properly. "Good morning, Brother Michael." "Good morning to you too, Lily," Michael replied. Then, remembering the time, he asked, confused, "Aren't you going to school today?" To his surprise, Lily laughed, leaving him even more confused. Suspicious, Michael unlocked his phone to check the date. "Oh, it's the weekend," he muttered, his eyelids twitching. The day before yesterday had been Thursday, his awakening day, and yesterday was Friday. However, ever since becoming an awakener, Michael's sense of time had become skewed. With his mind constantly occupied, every day felt the same. The fact that he no longer had to worry about school only made it worse. "Yes, it's the weekend, Brother Michael," Lily said, still amused, before getting to the point. "Mom told me to check if you were awake. She's preparing to head to the mall to buy groceries and wanted to know if you needed anything. She just stepped out a while ago to grab something nearby, so she's not home right now." For some reason, Lily's eyes sparkled with expectation as she spoke. How could Michael not know what this little sister of his wanted after spending years with her? "What do you want?" Michael asked with a chuckle, setting his phone aside. "Beast meat," Lily said hesitantly, her voice soft but hopeful. "It's been so long since we've had it. Since we have a bit of money now, I was wondering, but it's okay if we can't." Hearing this, a look of realization appeared on Michael's face. Beast meat was a cultivation resource prized by cultivator apprentices. It activated the body's growth potential, making cultivation more effective. Even for ordinary people, consistent consumption brought physical benefits. Most importantly, it was delicious. However, the price of beast meat made it a luxury. A palm-sized piece of the cheapest beast meat cost about $400, too expensive for most middle-class families, let alone those below. Still, Lily's request made Michael tempted to taste it again. He thought it over. Now that he had money and the ability to earn more through his newfound powers, they could afford to indulge. Besides, beast meat would provide the nutrients his body needed. Normal food wasn't enough. He'd need 5 portions of a regular meal just to feel satisfied. It would also be good for Lily to have more access to cultivation resources, even if her talent wasn't great just like his. Almost non-existent. Okay, Michael finally said. SEO Arch the Nelfrio. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Tell Aunt Mia when she gets back that I'd love to have beast meat in my food. She should make plenty since my appetite's huge now. I'll send her $1,000 to buy and stock up on it. I want it in every meal from now on. Also, if I'm not here when she's back, let her know I have some business with the Supers Association. Okay, Brother Michael. Lily replied cheerfully before skipping out of the room, forgetting to close the door behind her. Shaking his head in amusement, Michael took a deep breath. He reached out mentally, focusing on his connection with Lucky. Michael could faintly sense the undead's presence and knew he could summon Lucky to the real world immediately if he wanted. Unfortunately, it was inconvenient to do so in his current location. Reluctantly, he pushed the thought aside and shifted his focus to Prince, who remained motionless in his storage space. One disadvantage of placing undead in storage was the severed connection. While it didn't destroy the contract, Michael couldn't feel anything from them until they were brought out. And with time frozen inside the space, they stayed in stasis indefinitely. Looking at his rank 1 rare undead filled Michael with anticipation. He didn't know why, but he had a strong feeling today would be a great day. Taking another deep breath, Michael began preparing to head out. Chapter 40 Preparation to Enter a Dimensional Crack, 2. Michael didn't bathe immediately after brushing his teeth. His stomach wouldn't allow it. Aunt Mia seemed to have cooked a huge meal last night, likely remembering his words about his appetite. Unfortunately, he'd been too far gone to enjoy it fresh. Still, food was food. With his hungry stomach growling, Michael wouldn't even care if it was a day old as long as it was edible. He devoured half the pot of rice, leaving Lily staring at him, stunned, as though he had a wormhole in his stomach. Only then did Michael feel half full. After satisfying himself, he finally went to bathe. Unfortunately, by the time he finished, Aunt Mia still hadn't returned. Michael had to leave without speaking to her. He could have waited, but there was no time. The day before, when Michael discovered that having more undead increased his daily evolution points, he realized he needed to contract more before 2 p.m. when the points refreshed. Missing that window would mean waiting another day. It was a little after 10 a.m. now, leaving him roughly 4 hours. With transportation to the association taking an hour, Michael had only 3 hours left, and that didn't include the distance to the dimensional cracks in Woodstone City. Unfortunately, Michael had no information about their exact locations or the necessary permissions to access them. Otherwise, he'd have gone straight there instead of to the association. He briefly considered riding Prince to the association. The idea was thrilling, but he didn't have the guts to try it. Maybe once the Federation releases more information about supernaturals and it's widely accepted, using powers in public will be fine, Michael mused, watching the taxi he was in drive past buildings. Knowing he still had some time before reaching the association, Michael relaxed in the back seat and pulled out his phone. It was the perfect time to log into the forums and scout for more information. Nothing concerned Michael more right now than the issue of his undead. The thought of having his forces divided between the land of origin and reality, without the ability to summon or dismiss them at will, left him deeply unsettled. How do other necromancers deal with this? Michael wondered. For the next 30 minutes, he absorbed another dose of knowledge. As he suspected, other necromancers faced similar challenges, but the situation wasn't as dire as he initially thought. If anything, it seemed Michael was the greedy one for wanting all his undead stored conveniently in the netherworld. But could anyone blame him? He was human. Greed was part of the package. Just as the real world was crucial to awakeners, the land of origin held even greater importance to many. However, Michael, having faced nothing but obstacles there with no opportunities gained yet, didn't fully share this sentiment. According to forum posts, necromancers and beast tamers, who, like Michael, struggled to store their undead or tamed beasts, could use a ritual to grant access to a subspace for their companions. Rituals were similar to casting spells, but instead of relying solely on one's internal energy, they required the use of external materials. Unfortunately, the methods for such rituals weren't easily available. CTHUNovelFire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Access required connections and resources, typically found in two places: Awakener academies and guilds. Yes, guilds. Due to the game-like nature of the land of origin and the world of Awakeners, terms like guilds were standard. These groups united individuals with common goals, pooling resources and knowledge. But Michael wasn't part of either. He hadn't been accepted into an Awakener academy, and this was the first time he'd even heard of guilds. The posts were direct. Having the right connections and resources, which weren't cheap, could easily resolve his issue of placing undead in the netherworld. However, these resources were tightly controlled by influential groups, requiring one to join them first. There was good news. Michael now had a potential solution. The bad news: he wasn't even qualified to approach the gates of an Awakener academy. Though specific names of Awakener academies weren't revealed on the forum, it was clear from the posts that the minimum requirement to be a student of an Awakener academy was to be a rank 2 Awakener. Had this been a year or two ago when he was 16 and had awakened, this wouldn't have been as much of an issue for Michael. The principal of his school truly didn't know what he was saying when he claimed that 16-year-old Awakeners could easily prepare for an Awakener academy in just 3 months. It was like how an Awakener had claimed in the first post Michael read, a rank 3 cultivator could handle a rank 2 rare rank wyvern. Michael suspected that particular Awakener held a grudge against cultivators and was simply trolling them. Sure, Awakeners could grow stronger quickly by leveling up, but it wasn't as simple as it sounded. For one, leveling became progressively harder as one grew stronger, and so did the monsters. However, this wasn't Michael's immediate issue. As long as there were monsters he could kill, he could handle that. The real obstacle was the time limit: 3 months to reach rank 2. While Michael was confident about reaching rank 1, rank 2 was an entirely different matter. He'd also read about special recruitment for students with exceptional talent, but unless he was willing to expose his talent, he could forget about such an opportunity. Whatever, I'll just do what I can. Even if he didn't manage to enter an Awakener academy, Michael didn't believe he'd be any worse than those who did, not with his talent. At most, he'd follow the path described in the forum posts, like most necromancers, dividing his forces between both worlds to maintain a balance of power without crippling his combat prowess. It seemed like as long as it was in a space where supernaturals lived, it wasn't rare to have his undead out. Michael didn't know why the Federation or the Supers Association weren't mentioned as potential sources of knowledge or resources for rituals, but he figured there was a reason. He just wasn't qualified to know yet. Since there was still time before he reached the association, Michael continued reading the forum posts, steadily increasing his understanding of the supernatural world he had stepped into.